Welcome AI community with no borders after this long summer break. I hope you're all healthy and we're able to recharge your batteries. We are thrilled to kick off this new season with far over 3,000 registered attendees from almost 100 countries. That's just amazing. Let us know in the chat, where are you joining us from? We're not taking it for granted that you invest your valuable time and do very much appreciate having you listening to what our impressive AI thought leaders and experts have to share. We're welcoming you to exchange with all of us in the chat, connect on social media, and establish new cognitive relations around the globe. This is exactly what the SwissCognitive community is aiming for. Today, it's a very special day, and I'm quite emotional about it. SwissCognitive is celebrating its 5th anniversary. Yesterday, 5 years ago, Andy and I ran our first cognitive tank at the airport of Zurich with only 34 believers in the power of AI and Andy's and my vision. These first C-levels supported us in our development and growth. Additionally, great AI thought leaders from around the world became aware of us and opened us doors to the UN, to the World Economic Forum, various multinational enterprises, world-renowned universities and institutions, and in a very rapid way, more and more people, companies and institutions joined us, and we started to hire our first employees. We grew from 34 believers to over 500,000 future-driven AI fellows worldwide, where you guys belong to. It was an incredible, exciting time. But believe me, it was hard work and wasn't always easy for such a startup, especially during COVID time. But what made us keeping going is all of you. You're incredible supporter and believers in what we do. A huge thank you from Andy and myself and the whole SwissCognitive team for your trust. You guys are amazing, and it's a great joy to work for all of you. I would love to share with you one of our heartfelt milestones. During these extraordinary times of COVID, Andy and I established an AI foundation, the Cognitive Valley, where we collaborate with a variety of foreign stakeholders and reach across borders to develop international solutions for inherently global issues. Therefore, we must educate ourselves, and this is why today's topic is about preparing 3 billion employees for AI. We are facing an absolute challenge. The shelf-life of skills is decreasing rapidly, and if that wasn't enough, with the development of cognitive technology, the skills gap is also increasing. Therefore, is no doubt, it is our pivotal responsibility today to start aligning employees' talents to organize capabilities. So how do we educate and prepare our workforce and transform our workplace so that we are all ready to embrace and collaborate with AI? Can we, in fact, talk about collaboration? How can organizations and leaders approach this important topic with generating fear, but rather come across as agile, both in the eyes of their employees and customers? And very important, how can you as an individual prepare, and what are the skills and qualities that you mention to the younger generation around you that counts in today's increasingly competitive world? Do we really all have to become technology experts? To find answers to all and many more of our questions, we ask the biggest leaders and experts in the next 3 hours across industries in the global AI ecosystem, how industries, organizations, disciplines, and individuals can get ready to embrace and work hand in hand with cognitive technologies. From bird's eye view, our focus points for today include harmonizing the collaboration of humans and algorithms, preparing and empowering the workforce for the future, and aligning employee skills to organizational capabilities. The agenda will be also filled with some inspiring and thought-provoking keynotes on business transformation with AI, the most important qualifications that you will need in the near future, and finally, how to become the winner of the transitions rather than allowing yourself to become the victim of the system, namely turning the why me into try me, with the legendary David Meltzer, who will come on stage for the final keynote of this global reaching event. Dear audience, please use the chat for Q&A and connect with each other. Additionally, I want to encourage you to connect on social media and mention the speakers and, of course, SwissCognitive in your post. Now, as a first, dear AI enthusiasts around the globe, let us kick off our events with an interview that gives an insight into one of the biggest industries. Industry telecommunication, not only from a professional, but also from a very personal perspective. It is my great honor being joined by Arun, Managing Director and Country Head India and Head of Innovation at Telstra. Arun, you are passionate about technology's profound impact on society and in catalyzing humanity's potential. You believe that people are at the center of all innovation and progress. As leader of India Innovation, you built the Futuristic Innovation and Capability Center of Telstra. You have spent 30 years transforming large, complex businesses into digital, agile, innovative organizations and have been a global technology and business leader across industries like banking, financial services, FMCG, and telecom. Before this event, you mentioned to us humans and machines are mutually replaceable. They are interdependent. Very nicely said, Arun. Now, I would love to share your experience with our audience and dive into some questions, finding out more about your views. So first, Arun, you have been across industry for the last 3 decades. Let us discuss first how jobs and skills have changed in the last 3 decades and how will they change in the next decade?
Thank you, Dalit. Great question to begin off such an important conference, especially a global discussion around what is arguably the most important topic of our lifetimes, as disruptive as electricity was more than 100 years ago. Now, if you look at the last 3 decades, I think what we've witnessed is changes within a decade that happened over technologies that took 100 years to mature. Let's take fever thermometer. Yeah, that little blob of mercury at the end of a glass tube. Now, if that was a very formidable tool in the hands of a mother wanting to know whether her child is unwell or not, lasted for more than 100 years without any design change. And boom, today we have digital thermometers, right? You look at the automotive industry, something that took 100 years to develop, the internal combustion engine, the way the automobile is manufactured, and look at what it is today. We're talking about autonomous automobiles. We're talking about self-driving systems and autopilots. So I think the change that we've witnessed is underpinned by 2 very important things. One, software. That software defines everything, not just a few things. I mean, even until the first 2 decades, software pervaded a few things, not everything. And now software is in everything. Everything connects with everything. So I guess in that context, what has changed in terms of jobs and skills is that we used to have machines working for us. And now we are working with machines. Now, if you look at the history of automation, if you look at the history of mechanization from the industrialization period, men used machines to delegate work. Now, we actually wanted machines to automate our work. And now machines actually take over our thinking skills. So the first time in the history of mankind, we've actually delegated thinking and not just doing. We were all along delegating doing to the machines. Now we are delegating thinking, logic, and the whole sensing and awareness to machines. And I think that's made a significant difference to the way we look at jobs and skills. Now, look at banking. You look at the ease with which you do cross-border payments. You look at the way robo-advisors are becoming sophisticated in investment strategies. That was impossible even 2 decades ago. And that sophistication started growing in this decade, right? You look at the telecom industry, you look at the ease with which a smartphone and mobility has pervaded everybody's life. You look at media, you look at communication, and you look at software, and all three are converging, right? Broadcast TV is now streaming TV. And given streaming technologies, now you can stream anything. Now you put AR and VR on top of it. And what you get is you're creating your own worlds as you go along. So I think the jobs and skills that got took 3 decades to disrupt will now increasingly take shorter life cycles to disrupt. So the shelf life of jobs and skills have reduced tremendously. But that's not a cause of worry. I think it's a cause of worry because people still don't understand what AI is capable of, what automation is capable of. But if you really look at it, what we're witnessing is creative destruction of jobs and skills. I think people are focusing more and more on creativity, on imagination, using human potential, while we're delegating routine stuff, patterned stuff to machines. You look at chess, right? In 96, when the first ever match of Deep Blue and Kasparov happened, February 10, 1996, he lost. It was probably the first time a machine had beaten a reigning world champion, right? But that chess program and the chess programs that exist today are very, very different. So what does a chess player do? It doesn't eliminate the greatness of a world champion like Magnus Carlsen, right? I think what we're trying now, what we're witnessing, is that we're using increasingly neural networks and artificial intelligence to really become better human in terms of our potential. And that potential will lead to more job creation and more skills. I see the future of jobs and future skills as something that is a synthesis of people and machines. And that's going to continue. So it's going to be a very, very exponentially productive and a lot of creative endeavors from people's side.
Do you think will be the main challenge and the main impact for customer and employees experiences within such organizational models?
I think the biggest expectations from a customer point of view or an employee point of view or any human that increasingly interfaces with machines, cognition, automation, etc., is we expect less and less friction and we expect more and more simplicity, right? uh, I don't think customers actually care about what technology you use or how that technology works. I think what customers care about is, as late Professor Clayton Christensen said, they want their jobs to be done. And they want those jobs to be done faster, better, cheaper, and in more delightful ways. Right? So if you work backwards from a customer experience, I think the biggest impact on organizational model is simplicity. How do you use technology, cognitive technologies especially, to make lives simple, not harder, not more complicated? The technology may be complicated, but as it manifests itself for customer user usage, employee usage, it must be simple. For employees, I think there is an additional implication because for employees, the way we measure productivity has to change. It's no longer about how fast you can do repetitive tasks or how efficiently you do repetitive tasks. Efficiency is an industrial era concept. I think now we're talking about effectiveness and experience. I think employees look for jobs that are more creative, where their passions, their imagination are valued. So, how will you measure the imagination of someone who transforms a process for a customer? How will you measure the creativity of someone, the innovation of someone who's creating new products and new experiences for customers? So, all these, the customer expectations, the employee experience, have a huge impact on organizational models. We're going to see much more decentralized organizational models. And look at what's happening in cryptocurrency world, for instance. It's the concept is decentralized, that there is that the trust that is with one single entity is now spread across. And I think organizational models will get more and more flatter, they'll get decentralized, they'll get more empowered. And I think organizational models will ride tremendously on human creativity, innovation, and imagination.
I mean, if we're looking now on this different organization are at various level of maturity in cognitive adaptation. Where do you see the biggest challenge in the ecosystem when it comes to the adaptation and potentials of cognitive technologies, including AI?
I think there is a lot of misconception around the sophisticated use of technology, whether it's automation, robotics, uh, advanced software engineering, up to machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I think the old way of looking at success of these technology deployment was about eliminating jobs. And that's no longer a success. Because I think those were, as I said, industrial era efficiency driven, very different old school productivity measures. I think what we're talking about, the biggest challenge now, is how do you use this not to eliminate the humans in a process, but to elevate the humans in a process? So, how can a person serving the customer serve the customer much, much better, much more predictably, much with greater delightful experience, rather than saying, hey, we put a self-service kiosk out there, go talk to the kiosk, right? So I think the biggest number one challenge is how do you make humans and machines intersect for greater and better customer experience? The second big challenge is the proliferation of data, because any successful technology deployment rides on good, high quality data. AI, there is no such thing called an AI strategy without a great data strategy, right? And I think given the proliferation, the exponential growth of data and the weight and the increasing number of tools and architectures and the challenges in managing data, having a great data strategy and accurate data, real-time data and a real-time enterprise, that's the next big challenge. The third one clearly, and which is most important challenge in technology, is people. Right? And when I say people, I mean not just skills and job, but in terms of how are you going to lead people through the change? Uh, Someone very famously said many years back, technology is the answer, but what was the question? Right? And I think the question is, what do you want people to do with all this technology? Right? It's not just profits, eliminating jobs. It's not just about productivity. It's much, much more than that. The next human evolution is, I think, going to be about freeing up our minds, freeing up our imagination to do better for each other, for the world. And I think that human potential is yet to be unleashed. And the faster these technologies deploy, the faster these technologies evolve, there is a huge societal, organizational responsibilities on leaders to make sure that the human potential is changed as well. The human potential is valued and the human potential is raised. And that, I think, will be biggest challenge for the next few decades.
Loved when you said elevating human with the process. I think this brings it really much to the point. To summarize at the end for our audience, would be great to know what is the single most important aspects organizations need to be concerned about to leverage cognitive technology, and share with us how you guys are making that leverage.
Again, a great question. There are several. But what comes to my mind now, something that is really occupying a big portion of our industry, our society, our organizations thought process, is ethics. Because you see, AI ethics has to be at the center of development of AI and the deployment of AI. Now, in Telstra, for instance, we're leading with already a formal responsible AI policy in place. And every AI model planned, tested, is assessed for adherence to this policy. We have a very senior exec sponsored data and AI risk council that has set the principles for all our models and solutions, be it third party, etc., and it has to be upheld. And the council works very closely with both public and private enterprises inside and outside of our organization, like Gradient Institute, Sydney, etc. So to me, AI ethics is about a lot of things, a lot of important things. First, it must ensure human, social, and environmental well-being. Throughout their life cycle, AI systems should benefit individuals, should benefit society and the environment. The second is human-centered values in AI ethics. Now, AI systems should respect human rights, should respect human diversity and the autonomy of individuals. Fairness. How do you make sure that there is no bias? The human bias is not encapsulated into the machine learning systems, into the artificial intelligence systems. And I think that's a very, very important part of any AI-based system. Privacy protection and security, reliability and safety, and most importantly, I think what we call as transparency and explainability of AI systems. And that's a very, very important part, because you need to know how a machine has taken a decision. Now, if you go to a bank and apply for a loan, and the machine is doing the credit underwriting, you must be able to trace every aspect of the decision making transparently for the customer. And that's important, because to me, AI ethics is at the center of everything we do with technology in the future, because AI is going to be all pervasive, right from the smallest sensor to the largest industrial systems. You're going to see more and more intelligent systems in hardware, in software, in interaction between systems, different types of systems. And so having a very strong and broad code of ethics around how you develop AI, how is it transparently explained, how is it deployed, and how can it be contested, how can it be corrected, and how do you make sure that at the end of the day, the humans are actually in charge and AI is complementing, aiding us, and not the other way around. I think those I think are very, very important topic. To my mind, that's probably the biggest thing that's occupying my mind and minds of several leaders who are looking at phenomenal growth of AI machine learning applications in every process in the industry.
Thanks. We have quite some questions from the audience, and I would actually like to pick at least one or two from them.
Yeah.
One is a very emotional one, I think, also, is like, who will be in the lead, people or machine at the end? What are your perspectives on that?
I'm an optimist, and I believe in the human potential. And I think it will always be humans who will lead. However, we need to warn ourselves, because in the past we have seen that once we become slaves to technology, once technology is, you know, developed in an uncontrolled, unregulated way, then it becomes very difficult to control it. And I think the chances of AI going rogue is very high unless we embed that with deep sense of code of ethics, strong regulation, control over the underlying data, etc. But like I said, I'm an optimist. I always think that human creativity, ingenuity, human imagination will always surpass any machine's ability, because I think we are not just biological beings. The biology in a human can be simulated in a computer. At some point in time, we will have machines that can even, we have machines that sense. We will even have machines that can smell, machines that can paint a picture of the future. You look at GPT-3 and it can actually write poetry, bad ones, but still can write poetry. But I think at the end of the day, humans are much more than biological creatures. We are spiritual creatures. We have consciousness, and we are sentient beings. And I think that will always make us superior to any machine, any advanced machine.
Thanks a lot.
I am, by the way, a great fan of science fiction. But I do believe that science fiction, a lot of fiction in science fiction will remain fiction, and that people will always be the masters.
Great. Thanks a lot. I would like actually to end with your optimism. I think it's a great point. It was very insightful. Thank you, Arun, for sharing your views, both from professional and personal perspective. These are the stories that we like to share with our community, real stories that people can relate to and learn from. It was my great pleasure to interview you, and I hope to see you again on one of our future stages, because there is so much to share with you. And I hope that we will be able to benefit from your knowledge. Now, back to you, dear audience. Don't forget to use the chat, exchange with your AI peers around the world, connect with each other, as well as with the speakers on LinkedIn, where you can also join the SwissCognitive conversation going during these hours and also after this event. There is a lot to share and brainstorm about, which already takes me to our next session. We're going to have a panel about harmonizing the collaboration of humans and algorithms. Please welcome with me our panelists. The first one is Alex. Alex, you as a first panelist are the co-founder and executive director of the ETH AI Center, with whom SwissCognitive started an official partnership to strengthen each other for greater success in the world of AI. The ETH AI Center was built with the intention of developing the foundations for new AI applications, working in the conjunction with business, becoming a startup incubator in the field of AI, and facilitating joint research projects with international experts. With this high entrepreneurial spirit, Alex founded his first company at the age of 21. Hi. And at the same time, completed his computer science studies in record time. He's also co-founder and board member at the S2S Ventures, board member at Adobe, and investor at Syntara, Strong Network, and Way. He's director at Auto ID Labs and used to work as national head of Magic Leap Switzerland. Alex holds a Master of Science in Computer Science, Computational Linguistics from Technical University of Munich, a PhD in Management Technology and Economic from ETH Zurich, and is a private lecturer at the University of St. Gallen. Thanks for being with us. Our second panelist is my dear friend Tanvi. Tanvi, you are Managing Director for Analytics and Data Science at Credit Suisse, one of our leading banks in Switzerland. You have an extensive experience in big data, AI, data science, machine learning, statistics, and digital analytics. You created and leading one of the largest team of big data and analytics in the space of banking and financial regulatory compliance in Switzerland. You're constantly working to implement use cases and monetize the real value of big data for banking and finance. You're a strong believer of joining hands with universities to unlock the value of big data. Tanvi, you are driven to make sense of numbers, a perfect panel match with Alex. Next to you, we have on stage Gary, who is chair of the Future of Work at Singularity University and thought his work helps people understand the impact of exponential change on the world of work and education. He teaches 9 different courses on LinkedIn Learning with over 850,000 learners. He is a regular keynote speaker, and his key topics are wrapped around questions such as how are industry, organizations, and jobs becoming transformed by exponential technologies? What are the strategies that can help organizations and individuals to thrive in a rapidly changing world of work? How can you help your workers to become lifelong learners? How can you leverage technology to become a learning organization? And how can leaders themselves learn how to learn? Gary, you are also an author on a very relevant topic of us today, the next rules of work. It's a great benefit to all of us having you with us today. Thank you. Last on this panel, I'm welcoming you, Nazim. You have been with Novartis for 12 years and are currently responsible for shaping and driving the P&O strategy for Data 42 Novartis transformational program to leverage patient, clinical, and research data to change the way the company develops medicine. You specialize in human-centric process and technology optimization, building high-performing driver teams, creating efficiencies, employee experience, and ultimately delivering more value for our people, business, and stakeholders. Great you made the time to share your valuable insights with our community. Now, last but not least, this impactful panel is being chaired by our fellow Richard. Richard, you are an AI advisor, author, and speaker, and founder of neuralpath.io, an AI consulting practice that advises companies on how to responsibly monetize data. You're the founder and chair of the MKAI network and host of the Boundless podcasts. Additionally, you are a graduate of the MIT AI strategy course and a widely published author on the future of AI, are a member of the Resilience Frontiers Advisory Group of the Communicating Climate Change, and have collaborated with the United Nations Environmental Programme to support their AI and digital transformation journey. My dear AI thought leaders, the virtual stage is yours. Richard, over to you.
We've got minutes on the clock and so much to talk about. Our topic again, harmonizing the collaboration of humans and algorithms. And we could spend the entire time just talking about those words and what they mean. But I was struck this weekend talking to an architect. And when I mentioned AI, he said to me, machines, they're taking our jobs, aren't they? And replacing us so that we can do different things. I said, maybe. I said, could you give me an example of something where that might be the case? And he said he couldn't. And I thought, isn't that interesting that he's so passionate about that statement, yet, like many of us, actually lack the examples to say where this is happening and why. Gary, I come to you first, keeping our architect friend in mind here, and the topic of harmonizing the collaboration. To begin with, what degree do we find ourselves just paddling against that wave of disinformation that we've got from the mainstream media in this area?
Well, as a recovering journalist myself, I was the editorial director for 6 technology magazines. I'm always happy to engage in the international sport of bashing the media when it's justified. But here it works both ways. There's an understandable lack of technical understanding by many writers in the popular press. So those of us here in Silicon Valley, we can feel quite superior when we see articles that misrepresent how the technology works. But there's also a widespread patronizing attitude by technologists whose response typically is, just trust me. Yet when many software developers haven't the slightest clue what's going on in the black box of algorithm decision making, nor how many of their own human biases are baked into code like walnuts in a cake, technologists are often their own worst enemies. Their focus is often on innovation and disruption, when they also need to focus on transparency and education. So it's perfectly understandable that your architect friend would see the headlines that talk about the disruption of work without really understanding a lot of the underpinnings as to how that shift is actually occurring.
You make a very interesting point, Gary, and I think technology does sweep out these waves of new ideas. And then when it hits the public, we're often surprised, aren't we? We think 5G is a great idea, and then people say it causes all sorts of problems that no one was expecting. We say, here's a COVID vaccine, and some people go, yes, but it's putting mind chips into you, control you. And we don't see these narratives, do we, until suddenly they're out there, and they're quite startling. Tanvi, let's just focus on this exact exam question that we've been set today. And let's start with this word harmonizing. So it sounds like a nice word, but when it comes to corporations, employees, users, customers, I'm not sure how that all fits together and which harmony we think we're looking to achieve. Could you make a little more sense out of that for us, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things to augment to what Gary was saying, it's popular journalism, it's a lot of biases towards what people interpret, what technology can and cannot do. But it also comes with a lot of very thought through sort of surveys when we get statements like from the Oxford University back in 2018, 47% of the jobs in the Americas would not exist by 2030, or the latest has been from McKinsey to say 800 million jobs by the end of 2030 would be existing or not existing in its current form. So people out there that are not dealing with technology or getting into the nitty-gritties of it kind of have this very scary feeling of what sort of world are they heading to. So it's not just the interpretation in my view, it's also a lot of these very pronounced sort of organizations and universities that makes the situation difficult, because people just read the last sentence to say, in summary, that's what's going to happen. It doesn't look into the details of what kind of jobs, when, why, how are going to be coming to an effect, and what do you really need to do, or what can you do to not be afraid of this situation, but be fortunate in this situation. And to your very specific question of what does harmony really means, I think one of the things in a very simple, straight statement would be an AlphaGo, right? The AlphaGo solution is the solution where the computer learned to make the best moves like the humans. So it was completely augmented with what the human taught him or her or it. Plus the fact that in this process, the computer got creative to find solutions to the problem. And then in that context, it was extremely, extremely helpful for the humans to realize, or in that context, South Korea to realize that there's a possibility of a new world where a lot of complex problems, whether we talk climate change, whether we talk about having the next COVID virus solution, vaccination coming in no effect in time, can then be solved by not just the collective intelligence of the humans, but the intelligence of humans and machines in a harmonized optimized way. So that to me would be the meaning of harmonization, when we try and find solutions to the problems that even the humans would believe is in their best is in their best side. It isn't the machine and the man competing against each other.
And there's only one of those parties is actually enjoying playing the game as well. Alex, there are people, though, who are managed by algorithms, though, aren't there?
So basically, what you're saying is like one of the main concerns that you read very often, that you're somehow remote controlled and powerless, right? So this is why new technologies often trigger like an impulse of resistance. I remember when my grandparents told me they were jumping off the street when the first cars came along, right? And so now there's a whole automotive industry getting us faster from A to B. Now we're worried, how can we make that sustainable, right? So this is kind of like, there are a number of misconceptions. And one of them is really also related to what is the role of AI. So we see very, very clearly, it's a tool. It's there to amplify the best of humans, not the worst, not to replace. And that's a very simple thing to look at the world.
Okay, but if you're an employee for Uber Eats maybe, or Amazon, just to pick a couple off the top of my head, I mean, it is possible that you could be hired, managed and fired by a machine, not a human, correct?
So today the decisions, like also in the medical area, are still made by the physicians, right? So there's a person behind, there's no automatic firing. Of course, technology can be misused like any tool. And I think we're in a transition phase where it's not clear of over-regulation, under-regulation. A couple of ground rules are not clear, and some companies use it to their advantage. Others are playing nice. And typically the bad stories are the ones that are really sticking in people's head, while we should focus on how do we get it right.
Okay, all right. Nassim, let's keep a balanced argument here for the benefits of the panel. What are some good examples here? What do you think of when we talk about human algorithmic cooperation? Where is it working well?
It's a hard, like even like complex problem statement as that even that Tanu started, I mean that mentioning that. I think that the era of the human intellectual superiority is already ending, right? Even that it didn't, as you highlighted that with the Uber example, and that what the critical part is as well, that the computational power is not the only differentiator, as also Alex highlighted as well, that we are working in Novartis, like building the biggest data lake by transforming the sum of the medicinal programs, and the way that the critical word is cooperation and that harmony and collaboration. I think if I build more examples, the skill that is critical, that how to connect the data with the humans, the real experts, to identify and also that to create more innovative solutions. So that's also very critical, that to build that trust environment where that even that the real experts also that the playing the data in a safe environment. And I think what we are also trying to assist with our people, that to upscale them by learning new skills by using the algorithms. As you also know that your algorithm and data will be more even that is strong if you also experiment new cases. And that's also create new patterns for the peoples, that how can they learn in a different mindset with a non-silo environment. I think that this algorithm cooperation connection will be still, of course, that we are connecting the real humans that with the real like algorithms. But the future will be that even we are continuing that being getting more exposed to data and more fair environment, more equal. And as Alex highlighted, that it's not still on the game that kind of some things are up in the air. We should be about to trust people. We should also create more examples about that how this cooperation will also create a simple connection between using the data, and scientific people can also create more even useful use cases and that new algorithms. So that's even that if I'm going to be explaining it.
So Alex, can I just throw something in?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the important part is that if you get a recommendation, if it's in a medical area, this patient, she might have this diagnosis, then, the next thing they're currently missing is why, how did the system learn that this might be a reasonable conclusion, right? So this is what we have in the whole explainable AI area. That, of course, in the early days when the AI topic was smaller, it's completely different than now with deep learning, where there were a lot of people just throwing data at problems, input, output, and hoping it does something, right? So I think like now we're at a stage where you want to understand why that it really can work together. And the problem is, which we also see, there are two systems. One, which are giving decision support. This is, I think, hiring people, firing people, making decisions about your treatment. This is still the professionals that are in charge. And then there are other parts, like for instance, in the autonomous driving area. If we want cars to drive autonomously, they need to make autonomous decisions because there's no time to intervene and be in the loop. And I often these two camps are mixed, which makes it very, very difficult. And so this is where we need to get to, like that everywhere where you're in the loop, you should understand how to use that information. The same that the doctors are trained to use like X-ray. And on the other side, we need ways to make sure that they are really behaving like they should. And the problem is just that many of the systems, if they're image-based or voice-based, it could be an infinite amount of inputs. And I think this is creating some concern that you say, if it learns something from data, we will never have all data. So how can you be sure that it's not doing something which was not intended to?
The word trust has come up a couple of times. Tanvi, you want to contribute to this one? You're just muted, if you wouldn't mind just unmuting.
Okay. All right. Am I audible now?
Yes.
I just wanted to augment a lot of stuff that, Alex, you talk about, because I believe, Nazim, what you said from a medical perspective in Novartis, and I can throw a little bit of a light of what we think from a financial perspective. One of the key aspect that comes in when you try and get algorithmic decisions being a primary decision or a collaborative decision with the humans is about the collection of data. And that's where privacy plays a very, very important role. Even the human starts agreeing with a lot of the decision making that comes out of it. If there is enough data, if there is a possibility of collecting and aggregating enough data, that your predictive algorithm starts becoming more usable. And in that context, I think nowadays, as we start looking at federated learning, it would be quite a bit of a game changer also in harmonizing and collaborating between humans and AI, because now you can have access to your data without giving away access to your data, meaning that you can use the right set of information that is needed for an algorithm and not have to part with the exact set of data. And that is a set of work for the last decade or so that we have struggled with quite a bit on. So what I wanted to say is, if you're able to use a big pool of data, which becomes really expensive, really difficult to do, especially in the medical industry and the financial industry, then the trust in the data, which is a very loaded term to say, would get on to be at par with how humans make their decision making. Because I think I took the example of AlphaGo. That was a game. Collecting data wasn't a problem. I think that was a very good experiment. But if you want to have the predictions that the companies are talking about, 800 million people changing the way they're working, the decision making or the algorithms have to be at that level. And that's where this collection of information and a new set of technology in federated learning would come in very handy.
Okay, Gary, I want you to comment on this, because Tanvi describes a better future there, I think, in regards of data collection, data processing, what I might describe as sort of smarter ways of working with data rather than faster ways. Those faster ways have been very powerful. If you look at Facebook, they've 10x their revenue in 12 years, from about $8 billion to $86 billion by not really, Alex, having explainable algorithms, but actually just pointing the algorithms at the best cases that share data and therefore get more usage of the platforms, more data, and then more advertisers. So, Gary, is it feasible that we might move to a smarter way in the future, or isn't Facebook going to 10x again, really, from all this new data that's coming in, spatial computing and metaverse and you name it? What's feasible?
So first off, I think that going back into the 90s, when this thing called the internet was just starting to grow, we had this marvelous vision of this utopia of information, that more information would simply make us free. We would all use the information to be able to make wonderful decisions. And then along came social media, which made it quite clear that we as Clay Shirky from NYU is fond of saying, we have this filter failure problem. Well, actually, what Clay says, it's not a filter failure. It's actually our human minds just have the ability not to be able to process all that information. And so the technology itself should actually be filtering for us. But what's ended up happening is we tend to take all that massive information, which companies like Google have said want to make as free as possible. And the problem then is that we throw more and more technology that we may or may not understand a lot of the ramifications of. So we have this basically arms race between the onslaught of information that we're creating and we're processing, and we're also trying to continually put in place the complex adaptive systems to be able to manage it. And the challenge that we have as humans is that we only can go so far and so fast. And so I think the tremendous opportunity is that we're going to have this unleashed human potential that allows us to have access to more and more tools that allow us to solve problems. And we have this onslaught of information that will throw more and more technology that inevitably uses black box decision making to ensure that we don't actually understand the decisions that are being made. And so I think we have to have a lot more human-centered attitude towards how we think about trying to manage that dynamic balance.
Allow me to unmute myself to keep us nice and quiet when we need to be. It is going to be fascinating. Humans, whilst not rational, we certainly are predictable, and there's still a lot of money to be made by using algorithms to play into our predictable biases to make us do things. It's still $1 trillion industry. It's going to tempt a lot of people in. Nazim, let's come back to some core questions on this topic. With the rise of data that we're going to see in society from 5G devices and the internet of humans, or whatever you want to be calling this, the wearables, it is an onslaught of data. It's probably going to be fourfold the amount of data that we produce now by towards the end of this decade. Is it fair to say that the more data we have, the more we're going to have to rely on autonomous systems? And if that's the case, what are the pitfalls with that statement, if you agree?
That's a good thing. And if I push back and pull back, even think about that, what is even that autonomous decision making support us? If to think about the hiring process, for example, even like it's a critical element for every company, right? In terms of like that, because without the right people on the stage, you can't even that being successful within any kind of like in AI or ML, because the power of the human is the more important. But what kind of even that like autonomous decision, that process that you can brought on the hiring process, even that you have the data, even that you have like tons of people applying for your role, who is the right people? How can you ensure that that person right fit for your culture? How that you can ensure that the talents outside over there be ready to own your problem statement? I think that requires more and more even like an open environment for the companies, that how can they are having a courage to disrupt themselves, even that in terms of like even the cultural connection of this autonomous decision making process. People are also coming to your companies that because that if they have the problem statement, and if you're looking about this the technology talent perspective, it's really hard that even that convince them. You need to be more even disrupt yourself. You need to be more even courage to say that, okay, I'm ready that even that to openly invite you to my talent marketplace and let you that be yourself. And the key learnings even for myself, that even that to connect this with the super data environment where the people like complex data, but touching the human-centric side, human side is that a more critical and important. And I think you need to be create like a more trust environment rather than discussing about only the data side. And plus, if you think about that, those talents, you're gonna build your own platforms on the features, and you need to let them that even that to test a little bit. That's the hard part on in the company perspective, that how can you test people? And there are some different even that elements and platforms as well, that how you create a collaborative hiring process that and speaking the people's language. and inviting that more like a federative, democratic environment. So I think that's the future of even the whole art process, because transformation needs some upscaling as well. And the technology needs interdisciplinary skills that we are not only working on the medical environment, you need to also that combine different skills as well. How can you also combine these different skills that by creating the open talent marketplace? Those questions are going to be more and more even like a big problem for all our industries. And I think you need to experiment more on that side. I think Alex, you would like to add something as probably you said. Like,
yeah, I just want to throw in something because like, one kind of typical failure model that I see sometimes that people are doing is they're extremely data focused and say you need to get more data. Data is the decisive part. If you think about the autonomous driving example, if you just collect all of the data driving a straight road, you can have a lot of data, but it's still not giving you the certainty that it behaves the right way when there are kids running across the street, right? And the problem that I see also in the hiring side, for instance, also, and it applies also to other parts, is that people are thinking that AI is like a magic weapon that will solve it. But in the past, we have tons of examples that technology simply amplifies the process we have. It means a bad process gets worse, right? And most people don't spend this step and thinking, okay, if the process is recruiting all male candidates, let's throw AI at it. I can guarantee you it's going to be a disaster.
There's an expression, a little thing I've heard, that if you torture the data enough, it'll tell you anything. And Nazim and Alex, you're describing corporations, workplaces there where you have to go beyond the data. You have to allow your own creativity and your own views to come in and challenge these things. So thank you both for commenting on that. We've got about 4 minutes left on the clock. We said we'd come back to trust. The Edelman Barometer of Trust tells us that around the world, trust in technology companies is significantly diminished this year over last year. And on our topic of harmonizing the collaboration between humans and algorithms, trust, of course, trustworthiness must play a huge part. Tanvi, to you first. Do technology companies have a trust problem?
Absolutely. I think most of the time when we look at day-to-day problems, I feel that trust has various different meaning to it. Trust meaning, okay, are they really going to be our machines, algorithms really going to be taking our jobs? And that comes out to be very disruptive towards domain experts, people who are really doing the job today in their traditional forms and shapes. And algorithms, to all the points that Alex, you and Nazim, you made before, needs the algorithms to work with the domain experts. So it's the hybrid intelligence, as we call, understanding the domain, understanding the space of child running on the road kind of problems that that machines need to learn. But at the same time, humans believing that the results and the outputs coming from the machines are also going to be augmenting their own intelligence and their own decision making. And in my view, the best example of this space has been a very touching story I've heard from the military services, right? And as we all know that AI, machine learning, big data has been most advanced within the military services across the world. And later did it come to the corporates and the use cases that we all interact with on a day-to-day basis. So this was the story of the robos being made, and they are far away from being cognitively intelligent. They have been used more as the front runners in military warfare, so that most of the calamity happens with the robots, and the humans who are standing behind them do not have to have the disasters of a real war. So increasingly, as those robots were made to get the military services to work with them, they're buddied with their individual humans, so they can learn. The humans can learn through reinforcement learning of what they have to do or not. And the story goes along saying that when these robots were affected and were damaged, the humans got so attached to them that they actually went onto the war scene to bring them back. So that is a real story of trust. And if in the real world, in the business domains we talk about, we can create that set of trust between humans and machines, that would be euphoria. I mean, I use that as an example. I know, Gary, you want to say something, so I'll drop it very quickly. If that is an example we can use going forward, then I think the collaboration, the harmonization, which is the topic of today, would be a topic across the globe where we can work in harmony and solve some of the complex problems that we cannot solve as humans alone.
Thank you,
Over
Gary.
to you.
Gary, take us home.
So I'll
50
throw in,
seconds.
as we're walking out the door, I'll throw a couple firecrackers into the conversation. So the counter view I want to offer is that, as Alex said, software is a tool. And what I believe is that every time we elevate our technology, we diminish humans. So it's wonderful that humans want to go save robots on the battlefield, but I don't collaborate with a pen. I don't elevate the pen to having anywhere near the level I would a human collaborating with me. What instead I want my technology to do is to help me to do things better and the people around me to do better. So I believe that is actually our opportunity.
Gary, Tanvi, Nazim, Alex, thank you so very much for your time and insights and enthusiasm today on this panel. Very, very grateful.
Thank you, everybody. Wonderful to be on this panel.
Take care.
Thank you too. What an
Bye,
incredible panel. You set the tone. And Rich, thank you for the professional and involving moderation you always have. We have such a diverse audience with us, and I can only imagine how much they benefit from all of your insightful experience. We got quite some questions. I would like to share one question with you guys from the panel, and then we go on and ask the people in the chat, reach out directly to the speakers via LinkedIn or ask us for an intro. We'll be happy to help. So one question that goes actually directly to Nazim. How do you think HR attitude should change in hiring and engagement process of employees? Just very short, please.
Super. Thank you very much. I think it's a super like even important question. As I also start to share the experience about that, the hiring and AI, I think we need to even that to focus more about the human-centric organizational structure and especially that on the hard part is on the hiring process is that understanding the people mindset and that to find the right talent that who can fit and the cultural connection. For human resources perspective, the critical part is that to meet with the candidates early process and give the talents that not like a typical like a box thinking, give them like an open environment that what kind of problem statements that they want to solve it. So we need to be more even like a bit disrupted on the HR side as well to welcome people, be part of the problem statement. And that will also give people that to work for you, but not only for your company, they have to work for themselves. This will be also linked with like a really the cultural connection and a company perspective. Of course, HR departments are trying to give the process and creating the standard procedures, but more that HR teams are for the human and people, and we need to win that to do not forget the human capital is linked with the talents and the culture.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. Now, unfortunately, we have to stop here. I could listen to you guys for ages. So thanks a lot to all of you contributing. And again, dear audience, please feel free to reach out to them with your questions. Now let's switch to practical insights and see what can happen if we do manage to harmonize human and machine collaboration. We asked the legendary Chris from Adobe to join us for this today. Chris is an author, AI and mobile technologist, and Adobe's creative director. He's known for development of the creative enterprises space at Adobe and for writing Superhuman Human Innovation, Transforming Business with AI, which was co-authored by an AI called Emmy. Since a very young age, he was interested in the fusion of human creativity and technology. Chris started his career as a content creator and designer of digital customer experience. There, he already closely observed human interaction with AI and how AI has the power to amplify human creativity beyond bounds. He has been featured by Business Insider and Yahoo as one of the industry's leaders on the top issue challenges and opportunities in the fast-changing world of mobile. I feel honored to have you, Chris, on our SwissCognitive stage. Please tell us about superhuman innovation and transforming business with AI. The virtual stage is yours.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction. Great to be here. Excited, energized by the previous discussions and would love to continue that momentum talking about superhuman innovation and how AI is transforming every aspect of business as we know it. So greetings from the future of creativity and innovation. If we were live in person, which I hope we will be soon, I would ask by show of hands, how many of you have used AI in the last week? And probably I would say about 50 to 25% of you would raise your hands. But if you look back 1 billion years ago, the modern Homo sapient emerged. 1 billion minutes ago, religion emerged. 1 billion seconds ago, the first IBM computer emerged. And over 1 billion PDFs users ago, AI emerged. So if you have used a PDF within the last couple of days, you have in fact used artificial intelligence. And so AI is truly the platform of our time, everything from AlphaGo that we talked about in the previous session to autonomous cars. Hollywood, of course, has been showcasing a spectrum of ramifications of AI. We've got AI that can help write scripts or assess scripts, and of course we have thought leadership and voice bots. So it goes on and on. Every 10 to 15 years, the world receives a new gift of a new technology platform. First, we had the desktop computing revolution, then the mobile, then the cloud, and now truly AI. And so, for example, technology is embedded into our phone. It's now more powerful than the computational power that sent the first people up to the moon. Everything from suggesting how to respond to emails, to notifications, to billing, automated billing, and flight patterns. So really extraordinary technology that's embedded into our everyday lives. And it's quite exciting to see how AI, in terms of image recognition, is advancing on literally a daily basis in terms of autonomous cars. Just look at this intersection and the complexity that goes into recognizing and predicting and analyzing everything that needs to go seamlessly into this scenario. But my favorite is still the Roomba. We recently got a little puppy, and she also loves the Roomba, and embedded into these Roombas is some great AI that can detect the layout of the room and really understand where it should not bump into, but also identify spots to clean up. And so AI has really advanced from all aspects of our lives, from robotics, voice assistance, image recognition, even music. And so it's really quite exciting. If you ask consumers what aspect do they think AI is embedded into their daily lives, on average, about 33% will say it's embedded into their lives, where in reality, 77% of their life is embedded with AI and enhanced with it. So the more things seem to change, the more they actually stay the same. At the end of the day, it's not about the technology, it's about human-centered experiences. And so that goes across everything from this expectation of know me and respect me, speak in one voice, make technology transparent, delight me at every turn, integrate to innovate, and it goes on and on for these great experiences. At the end of the day, it's all about these great experiences. So much so, if you look at some recent stats, 86% of buyers will pay more for a better customer service, yet only 1% feel that they're getting an extraordinary experience. And this is where AI can have this instrumental opportunity across all aspects of experiences, from students to everyday work to customer experiences. So intelligent technology for intelligent experiences is really the gold rush of our times, the opportunity of our era. I like to take the term AI, or artificial intelligence, and flip it around to IA, intelligent assistant. And this always reminds me of my of all things, my childhood pet pigeon, Roxanne, she was a champion racing pigeon. She would go out 500 miles or so and always find her way home. And
May I just quickly, sorry, Chris, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but unfortunately we can't see your great slides and somehow we weren't able to reach out to you. Can we check quickly, make sure that the audience can see them? We tried to share it. Something didn't work.
Oh.
And I know they're so great, so I don't want to. Can you reshare them?
Sure, let's.
Thanks. I'm so sorry, but it would be a pity.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I heard the voice in the background. I thought that was the.
Yeah, therefore they asked me to jump in.
Yeah, thank you.
And you see me. That's fine.
Oh, wonderful. There we go.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay. It's and you can see a Roxanne the pigeon. There we go. Wonderful. This was my pet pigeon, Roxanne. And so growing up, I had a pet pigeon. She was a champion racing pigeon. She would go out 500 miles or so and always find her way home. And it always really struck me of this intelligence that was embedded into her. So you might be asking, why am I talking about my pet pigeon in an AI presentation? We have to go back even further to the first Greek Olympics, where they first used homing pigeons to send messages to local villages about the winners or the losers of the day. And they were finding that the runners were dying or getting heat exhaustion. So they had to find a better intelligent assistant to help send the messages. And much like Roxanne, we are now at this inflection point where we can start to use AI as our intelligent assistant, not to replace our capabilities, but to really elevate, enhance, and amplify our creativity and innovation. So I always bring up Roxanne in terms of when a conversation gets very technical. I just offer this up to remind everyone to baseline themselves. At the end of the day, AI is here to be an intelligent assistant for us. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning are transforming how we create and what we create. At Adobe, we're deeply passionate about how we can elevate creativity and innovation through the use of AI and ML through our platform called Adobe Sensei. So that's a little bit of the capabilities of Adobe Sensei. I bring up this slide for twofold. One, how we're leveraging AI across Adobe. As you can see, it's foundational in terms of three categories: intelligent creative services, intelligent document services, and intelligent experiences services. And we're quite excited about this new layer on top of Adobe Sensei called Adobe I/O that is all about inputs and outputs in terms of APIs and consoles for greater runtime and events. So quite exciting in terms of leveraging AI in a very practical way. We essentially use Adobe Sensei twofold. One, it powers a number of features across the multitude of products across our 3 clouds. And then we also have Adobe Sensei Services / Adobe I/O APIs that can be leveraged. Just would love to share with you as a metaphor on how AI is being woven into, one of our great products, Photoshop. Content-aware fill really can be able to identify the subject and then be able to mask it out very quickly. And in the past, it would take, hours and hours to do something so detailed like this. So I think it's a great example of how AI is taking away that grunt work and speeding up all aspects of our lives. Another one is within Adobe XD, our new experience design tool. And so simple things such as just pulling this out for a responsive resize is really instrumental in its identifying what will be the best composition. So quite exciting on that side. One of my favorites is how within Adobe Premiere, you can now track the subject matter by identifying where the focal point is, and it can really help in terms of speeding up editing. After Effects, if you notice that little flag on the bottom, that's been wiped out, so you can, again, identify objects and then seamlessly take them out of the image. Also, this has really been accelerated over the last 16 months or so with digital documents. Adobe Sensei is now embedded into Document Cloud PDFs, so you can take images of paper documents and digitize them. So those were some examples of how Sensei AI is embedded into our features. And then here's a couple examples of how it's embedded into APIs. And so Adobe I/O, we have a number of APIs such as auto tagging and auto cropping. Auto tagging can identify the image and then also the characteristics of the image. We also have image caption, where it's understanding what's happening in the image and it's creating some captions around it. So with all of this great, exciting technology, it's also very fundamental to have AI ethics. One example is we're working with UC Berkeley on identifying images that were manipulated or altered. And so AI, of course, is a focus, but of course, ethical design principles is a major component. So I always love to end a presentation, expectations for 2030. In reality, the only sustainable response is to to technology disruption is to try to lead it. So that's the presentation. If you'd love to learn more, recently wrote a book called Superhuman Innovation, where I talk in more depth and detail about it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Chris, for sharing with you your practical experience. And I just want to mention that obviously these use cases are coming together with kind of a product performance. And I just want to share with our audience that obviously we're strictly non-sales, but it's a bit difficult to show cases with these tools, obviously without mentioning them. So here again, thanks, Chris, for sharing with us how AI comes together with creativity. Now, let's go on. Now we will find out how we prepare the workforce to all that. How can we ensure that people feel empowered by emerging technology? We dive now into a panel discussion on preparing and empowering the workforce for the future with our panelists Laila, Amit, Marco, and Matthew, chaired by Katarina. Let me start with you, Laila. Laila works at the intersection of technology, ethics, and the future of work for nonprofits and marginalized communities around the world. She founded and leads the Emerging Technology Initiative at NetHope. In this role, Laila is responsible for shaping the emerging technology agenda for a nonprofit consortium of over 50 leading global nonprofits. She brings together global NGOs with private sector, academic institutions, governments, and communities to collaborate on responsible and impactful use of technology, such as AI, for social good, inclusion, education, and work. Now, welcome with me Amit to this panel. Amit is a professor for AI, analytics, and marketing strategy at IMD Business School. Drawing from his own research, Common Pharma, and he advises startups on their strategy. Furthermore, we welcome Marco, who has been with McKinsey for 12 years, working on education, labor, and economics. Impact on our society that requires an upgrade to both education and economic systems. Marco leads McKinsey research on skills and attitudes to prepare citizens for the future. In his personal capacity, he authored the upcoming book, Outgrowing Capitalism, to propose an ecosystem that can better cope with emerging trends, including AI. Marco, we're all curious about your book. Matthew James Bailey, a warm welcome to Colorado. Matthew, you are an internationally recognized pioneer and authority in the global phenomena of innovation, AI, smart cities, and IoT. Your life and career have been dedicated to enabling fluttering future for humankind in partnership with the digital world. Your extraordinary leadership is widely acknowledged through the governments and the private sector. You are a sought-after advisor and keynote speaker, and recently published your first book, Inventing World 3.0, Evolutionary Ethics for AI, a new world vision to guide the future of humankind and AI into fluttering and ethical-centric world future. Matthew, it's our privilege to have you on this panel, which will be led now by Katarina. Katarina is May I hand over to you now, Katarina. Enjoy this discussion with this incredible and diverse panel. The stage is yours. Oh, give me a second. We can't. They are great, guys. Oh no, the Katarina is not here. Wow, I mean, I must say, until now, we almost didn't have any technical issues. So I think AI is getting better and better, don't you think so? I'll be more than happy to lead the panel, but I think we will manage to bring Katarina in.
I am in.
You are in? Great. At least we can hear you. We can't see you. I would say start, and we will manage your picture later then, perhaps.
Thank you very much. Just the admin needs to activate my camera. So wonderful. I am so really honored to chair this awesome panel. Well, I founded my company. Well, I will start with a short introduction to get everyone on the same page. And then we will start with a highly vibrant debate on empowering the future of workforce. So I founded my company on the results of my scientific work on the topic of building digital trust. So my daily task is it to give a software methodological and organizational answer to the question how to build digital trust and how to improve the decision making by humans and machines. So what is it? What is the situation and what is the problem we are facing? The people are afraid of AI, and why are they? First of all, they cannot grasp AI, but based on our cognitive abilities we all just do have. And the second point is that the brainstem makes 89% of all our decisions, and this happens subconsciously and can only be controlled by the prefrontal cortex to a very minimal extent. So, and in the brainstem, we just only have stored very basal informations, which are important for our evolutionary survival. And this generates fear as well, right? So when it comes to AI and digital solutions, based on the lack of controllability, on transparency, and our own cognitive abilities, our brain is marinated in by cortisol and adrenaline, right? So what would be this solution? In a very small nutshell, we need to build a lot around the core AI machine. That would mean first the development of technologies that appeal to more of our senses. Currently, digital solutions are just addressing the visual sense, as the sight and the hearing sense. It's just two of our senses. We have 12. Some biologists are saying we have 21. So science isn't clear here. Second, transparency, cognitive traceability of AI solutions. Third, cultural imprint is a significant factor in human decision-making. Fourth, appropriation of technological capabilities for the general public. And fifth, acquisition of the ability to recognize one's own biases and noise to make targeted decisions with the help of decision-making methods. This leads to the vital feeling of cognitive mastery and the experience of self-efficiency expectation. So we know that human decision-making is, for human decision-making, cultural imprinting is very, very important. Preparing and empowering the workforce for the future should also encompass the culture of the people. Laila, you're the head of Emerging Technologies Initiative at NetHope. How can we empower the future of work to be more inclusive and more human-centric? And which role could the nonprofit sector play? And why is the sector important to the change? Laila, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Katharina. I've been really looking forward to this discussion because I work actually at the intersection of the needs of marginalized communities around the world, specific to learning and work. And I know we'll talk quite a bit about that. Also powerful technologies like AI and ethics and human rights. So to create a future of work and learning that is inclusive and human-centric, we need to do a couple of things. So first, we need to begin with an understanding that millions of people that are important to our collective future are already behind. So these are historically marginalized, they're refugees, they're women, they're people with disabilities, and they're behind because of the variety of factors, because of the crisis and conflicts, because of the lack of enabling environment, bias in our systems, and outdated approaches to education and work. And most recently, because of the pandemic, just a few months ago, UNICEF reported across the world, 800 million children were still not fully back in school and warned that many were at risk of never returning back to the classroom. And this is in addition to 258 million youth that were out of school prior to the pandemic, according to UNESCO. So the reason why I share this is that for the millions of individuals who are already behind, the gap is getting wider, and we need to ensure that we create conditions for them to be part of our collective future work and learning. So that's kind of the first point around who needs to be prepared for the future work. The second part is how do we do this? And I'll just scratch the surface here in a few minutes. we need to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in shaping the future work and learning that we all want. And the voice, as to your introduction, that I will bring into this discussion is the voice of the nonprofit sector, because nonprofits are key to our society's ability to deliver on the services for the individuals and communities in need. And nonprofits too need to get skilled up in order to deliver on their missions. And that's the work that I do at NetHope. I focus on upskilling nonprofits in AI and machine learning, data, ethics, and also digital identity. And then the third aspect of how we create a more inclusive future of work is by really being intentional about transforming learning to meet people where they are. And a couple of things in terms of the perspective that I cover, which is out of school learning, include learning being place and time agnostic, where learning can and should happen anywhere at any time. Learning being problem driven. So for the nonprofits, for example, they learn in order to solve very specific problems that they see in the world. So learning needs to be problem driven. And similarly, it needs to be project based, that to allow for the direct link to the impact, for the experimentation, and for the evolution of knowledge. And then lastly, learning really needs to be recognized, especially in the global South and with the marginalized populations. Proof of learning can open doors to new opportunities. It can also encourage transfer of knowledge to the peers. So if there's one thing that you take away from this brief reflection on the inclusive and human-centric future learning, is that our individual and collective well-being and our ability to tackle problems for our society and the planet really do depend on how inclusive the future of work and learning is. So over to you, Katharina.
Thank you so much, Laila. And I would also assume that as a nonprofit organization, you have a different access, and that will boost the credibility and also at the end, the learning curve of the participants, probably. Matthew, the founder and CEO of AI Ethics, really a fabulous AI thinker. I'm really thrilled to also to have you here on stage. We just have heard a lot of how important learning for the ones who have been left behind is. How can CXOs prepare for their workforce and corporate culture for winning the AI-centric futures?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here. Thank you very much. People can check out aiethics.world. We have a number of services available to help CXOs with this huge transformation that's coming between humans and machines. And also do check out Inventing World 3.0, Evolutionary Ethics for AI, which actually talks about encoding ethics and culture into artificial intelligence. So how do CXOs prepare for the future? There's two things you've mentioned, and I'll keep it very concise. One is culture. Culture drives everything. It drives us personally. It drives us in our family collective. It's influenced by spiritual and other types of traditions and modern traditions. Culture drives everything. And so what we're looking at is a new culture between humans and machines. And so corporate culture itself needs to be examined, incubated, and played with in terms of experimenting what that new corporate culture is going to look like. And it's important to recognize that each business unit has subcultures. And it's important not to destroy those, but to actually allow them to flourish. So corporate culture is going to be influenced heavily by this human-machine singularity. Now, we know that culture determines success of any corporation. And so any business that wishes to be successful in artificial intelligence absolutely needs to look at an ethics strategy and absolutely needs to look at their culture. And this will include sociologists in the conversation as well as philosophers. Very quickly, two bits of advice, and it's all documented in the book Inventing World 3.0. First of all, set up a task force. Look at the future of the business where humans and machines are working together. You're going to have to recognize that artificial intelligence is the new digital employee. And this will become an assistant through all aspects of the business in terms of how it operates, in terms of its products and innovation, in terms of its services, and more importantly, how the workforce is going to evolve into a new type of experience with this new intelligence. So that's going to be really important. The second thing is run internal projects. Set up an internal project and start to incubate. Start to experiment. Look at the use cases. Look at the different AI technologies. Start to codify, if you can, your corporate culture. This is possible. There is a research project in the European Union where they're looking at codifying democracy, which actually is codifying culture. So incubate projects is really important. And this is about building confidence and being able to actually prepare an experiment with bringing humans and machines together in a new type of common purpose and experience within the workforce. This is really, really imperative. And the final point, the two quick final points I'll make. Corporations need to determine, will they outsource their future with artificial intelligence, or will they insource it and innovate it internally based on their values, based on their culture, based on their belief systems? And this is really, really important, where ethics plays a fundamental role. And then finally, we're in a universal experiment. Change is part of this universal experience as beings. So don't fight against this change. Embrace it. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Yes, culture eats business strategy for breakfast, right? So yes, culture is essential, and from all different kinds of perspective, from the non-profit sector as well as from the corporate sector. And a lot of abilities and skills are being needed. Concrete professional skills as well as emotional and social skills. And I was really taken when I've read the brand new study conducted and published by Marco Dondi, senior manager at McKinsey. And so I really encourage everyone to have a look at his study. My question to you, Marco, what specific skills are needed, and how are these skills and attitudes connected to AI? Do you think should all citizens be proficient in all of these skills and attitudes to thrive them in the future?
Thanks, Katharina. And for those that haven't read the research, there's been a lot of research on the more technical skills and what type of professions are going to be increasing demand in the future. I think this research is looking much more at the transversal skills, that whatever job you're going to end up doing and whatever jobs will be available in 10, 20 years' time, these are the foundational skills that will help you thrive. And so the research was a bit trying to look into what are exactly those skills and go a bit deeper than the typical social, emotional, or soft skills, which we hear a lot. But one of the challenges we have faced is that I would say two main ones. One is that while everyone says that these are important, we don't see enough urgency and focus on developing these skills. And part of it is also because they are still at the high level, at the soft skill level, right? And there's really a richness and diversity within them. So the research have tried to codify and define what these skills might be. And first we selected really thinking about a world where AI has a bit more widespread than it is today. So the three criteria which chose to select these skills and attitudes were: one, when AI is more deployed, what are the uniquely humane skills that AI is quite far to master, right? The second one is it's clearly a much faster changing world. So what are all those skills and attitudes that enable people to thrive in this world? And then the third one is clearly digital and is becoming much more important. Artificial intelligence is also much based on digital technologies, right? So what are the basic digital skills that if you don't have, it's really difficult for you to engage? And so we came up with this 56. You would have to read the research, but what we did is that we tried to see what's the proficiency of people today in these skills, right? And the idea is that these skills are indeed important, not just for job, but also, if you have to sign up to the to get a passport digitally, it's really life citizenship skills. And we saw that we try to estimate what's the right level of proficiency that are needed for citizens, and we see how citizens across 18 countries are according to this. And there are some bigger gap, as you may imagine. In digital, there we saw bigger gap, but also in communication we saw bigger gap than we expected. And then the other thing that we did, we tried to correlate these proficiency with some outcomes already today, because one of the key objectives is to show these are really important. They are not just, yes, the soft skills are important. These are really driving high income. They are driving job satisfaction, and they're also driving employability. And so a couple of skills particularly came up to me was adaptability, coping with uncertainty, and also self-confidence. This was systematically among the most correlated to these outcomes. And the funny thing is that these are not very easy to develop. And I think the research also showed that the education system, while good to develop in general all these skills, in some of these skills, it really has a gap, right? There's no link between this skill proficiency and education.
Thank you very much, Marco. I do have a second question for you. Your research seems to suggest, Bill, that more education is important to future professional citizens, also to the ones which are not that easy to develop, but also that education seems to be inefficient at developing some of the skills and attitude to assess. So what do you propose? What needs to be changed?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, indeed, education overall, the people that have a university and higher level of education in general have, on average, a higher proficiency in these skills. But at the same time, we saw that for some specific buckets, especially within the self-leadership and the interpersonal realm, which are quite important for the future, and also they have been quite correlated to outcomes already. It seems to be, for some of these, irrelevant. Whether you did university or you stop at secondary school, your level of proficiency is the same. And so that poses indeed a question, right? So first of all, it's clear that more education is needed. And so especially for attitudes which are developed in the early age of life, actually, good quality education and access to good quality early childhood education is quite important. So there's still a question of, access is still important. It's not that education is ineffective. We need more and more quality of it. The second is indeed, if education in some of these skills seems not to be effective, and some of these are, just not the focus of traditional education, right? Like I've had a lot of discussion with university that are saying, you just don't even try to develop these soft skills, right? We were focused on technical and business skills. And so for those I see two challenges. One is we don't even use the same language. And so, we did an attempt, but like to define, but this is just a research paper from McKinsey, right? So I think I'd love to see an international agreement on, let's start to call these skills in a way and see how they are interconnected to each other. And so then, because that's what you need. There's a lot of people doing brilliant research on, how you develop these skills, how you assess these skills. But if we don't use the same language, then it's difficult to combine all this research and saying, hey, you know what, like if you need to develop self-awareness, these are the 3 best ways to do it, and they're proven. If you need to develop, empathy, this is how you do it. And so I think it's really around developing the common language and then unleashing the research and kind of make some order in the research to say, yes, this is how you best develop and how best you evidence that these skills are being developed. So these will be the 2 things that I'd really love the collective community to do, not just one organization or another.
Thank you very much. There's really a lot of things which needed to be done. Let's look a bit on the sea level, right? We have talked a lot about education from a broader perspective, but also the abilities at the sea levels in governments, corporations, and also in the nonprofit sector is highly important. I would like to turn now to Amit. Amit is a professor of POI. I really highly appreciate his work. Really look at his publications, they are awesome. Given that that the decision makers, so seniors, C-suite members, governmental officials, are often ill-informed on AI. How can upskilling of managers be achieved? I do see that also. Well, when I look into my projects, yeah, some of them do have a certain idea, but they have no suffer a bit what that means for their whole organization, for their people, for the acceptance of the people, of the abilities of AI. So what AI is able to do and how much work it needed to be done that AI really produce valuable outcome. So what needed to be done, Amit?
Thanks, Katrina, and thanks for the other panelists as well. There's been a terrific discussion so far. The way I look at it is, a lot of these things that we're talking about AI, the implementation of this is going to happen through the C-suite, through the execs. The problem there is that a lot of the folks that are manning the C-suites, whether it's in organizations, nonprofit organizations, whether it's in governments, whether it's in big companies, they're not typically technically educated. They're not educated in terms of artificial intelligence and machine learning. To add to that, what happens is that there is a tremendous amount of misinformation around AI and machine learning that's going around, right? I mean, if you crack open any newspaper, any popular business article or business press kind of an article, what you will essentially notice is some kind of crazy hype about AI, about some extreme experiments that are being run by some big corporations or in some labs, but these don't really reflect the reality on the ground of implementing machine learning. And quite honestly, these experiments are very cool to do in the lab. Google and Facebook, if you're those guys, you can do those. But if you're a standard small, medium enterprise, or even if you're a large business who is not Google or Amazon or Facebook, it is extremely hard for you to implement a lot of those things. To transfer them from the lab to the real life takes a lot of things to do. So what's really required is almost to step back and go to the basics, strip away all the hype that's surrounding AI and machine learning, talk to them about them in simple but not dumbed down terms, right? Because these are very smart people, but it needs to be explained in a simple way. We need to tell them first and foremost that this is not magic, this is not Terminator or killer robots, this is statistics, this is mathematics, this is computer science, this is stuff which was available in the 1980s perhaps. Today we can do it at scale. And it's about implementation and not performing magic with it. It's about adding value to society. That's what this is about. That's where we need to start. And just to add one more point to that, which Matthew already mentioned, once we do that, we can start having a talk with these people about ethics. Because that's where I see a huge gap as well, which is, you've got companies that have magnificent taglines about doing things ethically. And when you look at the actual decision making, that's far removed from some of this. And at least some of that gap comes about because people don't understand the kinds of things data can do, the kinds of things that surveillance or the kinds of outcomes that you can get with this technology. And that's why this kind of education is absolutely critical.
Thank you so much. Oh, I love this panel. Every one of you, you're so structured, so focused, and really giving really, really good advices. Second question to you, Amit. How will the process of value creation through education and value capture through a lifetime of employment change in an AI world?
So, related to what we were just discussing, right? I mean, look, irrespective of where you got your education, right? Whether you got it in Africa, South America, Asia, I don't really care. You probably had the same system of education as everyone else, right? You probably went to school for 10, 11, 12 years, then you went to college for a few years, and then if you wanted to do something else, you went above that. There's no reason for education to be like that. This is basically a remnant from the industrial age, from the 1900s, where we basically needed lots and lots of clerks to keep the industrial system running. What we need to move from is a system where we first create value in ourselves through getting education for 15, 16, 18, 20 years, whatever that number is, and then extracting value over the next 30 or 40 years by doing a job. That's the system we have today. That system is probably not going to work once AI takes off, because AI will keep on improving at a lot of the things that you and I can do today. What will therefore need to happen is a simultaneous system of value creation and value capture, something along the lines of I go in the morning, I work at something, in the evening I take classes, or in the weekends I take classes to add value to myself. that I can go on the weekdays and implement. And I got to keep doing that because I need to stay one step ahead of what machine learning can do. If I have a static knowledge base, which I've acquired over 10 or 15 years, eventually machine learning is going to overtake that, and I'll eventually be out of a job. But with the simultaneous value creation and value capture, there is hope that I still have a job in the future.
Thank you very much. You are a true inspiration and a superb motivator. We already have heard several times the word ethics and responsible AI. So responsible AI is an important issue to enable the workforce as well as the C-level to develop trust in the tools they are already using or they will use in the future. Laila, from your perspective, from the nonprofit sector, so can you tell us about some of the risks using AI and machine learning in the context of work and learning, and how do we address them?
Yeah, we can spend the whole session talking about this, so I'll be very brief. So briefly, first, why we've been talking about AI in work and education, there's a number of benefits that AI and machine learning systems, with their capacity to learn, to predict, and in some instances to make decisions based on those predictions, can help us with, whether it's reaching more people with educational services, amplifying human effort like of teachers and humanitarian staff, or improving outcomes through real-time feedback. So there are a number of benefits, but while AI could be beneficial when it's used in the wrong way, it can be incredibly damaging in the situations where it's actually making life-changing decisions about people's livelihoods and our future, like who gets hired, fired, promoted, who gets access to knowledge. And some of the most recurrent and recent ethical issues that we've seen include unfair outcomes, like discrimination and prejudice stemming from bias that might be embedded in our systems and data we use, or infringements on rights and values like surveillance, workplace surveillance. So briefly, how do we address those issues? Start by asking the question whether AI is suitable for the problem. The key to realizing the full value of AI and really doing this in a responsible way is applying AI to the right problems and context. Maybe just another thing to mention is address misuse and misuse by increasing AI literacy of the individuals and the public, and make sure that you have not only high quality data, but you have diverse teams and human oversight of AI systems. So I'll pause at this and happy to elaborate as a follow-up.
Thank you very much. We already are over time. So thank you so much, Laila, for your fabulous closing remarks. And really thank the whole team. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot to all of you. That was really great insights again, and time is just flying. And I think with all our panelists and keynote speakers, we can just go on for ages. One thing that I would like to ask the panelists still, and let's have another 60 seconds to elaborate on that, especially you, Laila, you said before, it's about, oh, okay. So is anyone from the panelists still here? Marco and Matthew,
yes,
great. Okay, so what Laila's mentioned before is about, that AI is taking the decision about who gets hired, who gets fired. All these ethical things that we are discussing. On the other hand, what I'm very much believe in is that obviously every human being is biased, and it's also a chance. And I would just like to finalize this panel with also a positive sentence about how AI can actually open doors for people who have been discriminated in the real life without machines and algorithms, and actually could have a great chance to be involved and included in the workforce.
Yes, so I'm pleased to announce we've an ethical AI certification maturity model, which addresses these problems, available on aiethics.world. It's the world's first. And the purpose is, to your point, is bringing humans and machines together in an ethical foundation that caters for diversity, which is important, which caters for cultural differences, to allow them to move forward in common meaning and purpose in a framework. So there is hope. And that, that's why we invented the ethical AI certification maturity model, to address these fundamental issues, to create a participative future for all stakeholders to be involved in the future of humans and machines and self-determine that singularity and that reality, rather than just the elite that are pushing it. And that takes away the fear paradigm, and it creates a new trust currency for us to collectively together invent the future.
Thanks, Marco. May I just have your insights on that too?
Yeah, I'm not really an AI expert, more than on skills, but on 2 feet, I would say that it'd be great if it's possible to even review some of the decisions we have taken, and if those decisions ended up being biased, you can actually build an AI machine to tell you, what are the most common biases, and then, almost, an AI to spot the biases that otherwise would be embedded in an AI machine.
Thanks a lot. What I love to say is, I see now we have the chance to unbias the bias. So thanks a lot for all your great insights. So much to share, discuss, and brainstorm about. And also thank you, Katarina, for your passionate way of moderating and engaging our panelists, even that you weren't here with your video. I think that made it probably a little bit more difficult. But again, a thanks to Laila, Amit, Marco, and Matthew for enriching this event with your views. And now a very interesting keynote is coming up on the topic of the qualification that will always secure to have a job. I'm very excited to hear the details from Pero. Pero, you strongly believe that the innate short-sightedness of humans is maybe the single worst and harmful shortcoming. You felt that way as a student already and founded FutureManagementGroup as the first private foresight consultancy in Germany's speaking world in 1991. You inspire and equip leaders to envision and build a bright future for their businesses and to lead their teams with foresight and a clear strategy. Pero, it is our honor to have you with us here. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you. Thinking about AI, what does it really mean? It means that there is a thesis that's not yet true, but it's going to be true in the future, that everything a human can do cognitively, AI can soon do better. And in the physical world, everything a human can do physically, the robots can soon do better. So if we look at the capabilities of humans, we first see that we are a sensory human being, which means we can perceive, we can recognize things. And still, AI is able to recognize the entire condition of a construction site with just one passing through. You exactly know where the socket is, if it's the right socket, at the right time, at the right place. And it's just one run through. And you can recognize everything that's happening there. AI recognizes the lie in the face. AI recognizes the depression in the face. So recognition, we are great at recognizing things, but AI can do better. Can we learn? Yeah, we learn so much. And still, AI can learn, as it did, Google AlphaZero, learn the chess game, rehearsed like for 4 hours, played against itself, and beat the best chess computer, not the human, but the best chess computer that mankind could build so far, 28-0. We can consult, we can provide knowledge to other people. And still, when I suffer from a bad disease, I want an AI to be used to read 1 million scientific publications and to recommend on the basis of my genetic profile, the first best, second best, and third best therapy against my disease. But I want a human to look at it. I want to look into eyes that I can trust. Why? Because I am human. And this is the first idea of what we need to be and what we can be, where we cannot be beaten by the AI in our capabilities. So I want a human to look at it, but I want the human, the physician, the doctor that looks at the results and consults with me to be a professional, which means to use the tools that are there and not to ignore them, not to let them grow beside her or him, but to sit on those modern tools, on those powerful tools, and to become a better consultant, a better physician, a better architect, a better lawyer for me as a client. We can communicate, but I can communicate almost even better today. We'll not recognize the voices. Your voice can be emulated within 5 minutes. So there's no real way in the long run that we will recognize, are we talking to a human or are we talking to an AI? And we've all seen the experiments already. Being creative. Many people think AI cannot be creative. It can. It can, of course, be creative. It can write symphonies. It can write text. It can even produce videos. It can construct parts for machines, and it can do so from the same possibility space as humans do. So there is no way that we are the only ones that can be creative. If the process of creation can be described, then AI can be creative, and it can be creative faster than we can be. Can AI administrate? Of course. If we put together blockchains and smart contracts and AI, we will be able, and we are almost able, to construct the decentralized autonomous organization, which means this is the organization where no human, this is the administration where no human is necessary to work. Do we want this? This is another question. Is it possible? Will it be possible to have like an entire insurance, an entire bank, the administration factories of today? They will be empty, and we will have to have other jobs and other functions. We will have to have other qualifications. Which are those? We will see. Will we still decide? Yeah, we will decide. And we need to make sure that we stay the bosses of the AIs. We need to make sure that we set the goals, that we determine the values. But this is going to be a huge task because the values are not going to be the same in the West or in the East, because we have different ideas of what a society is and what human rights are. So we will get help, like whom are we going to release from prison earlier or later? Which patient are we going to treat in which order in order to maximize survival? Will we be allowed or able to act, like to drive our cars? If we look at what, well, AI is able to do today, then we need to see that the exponential development will lead to self-driving cars being almost normal in the coming 9 or 10 years. And this is going to be a change. If we really look at the robo-taxis, this is going to be a change that is going to change our lives more than the smartphone did, way more, and way more intensive than the smartphone did. So our question is, if I can do it all, if intelligent machines can do it all, then what do we need to be? What do we need to learn? How do we need to act? What is our role in this world of the future, in this working world of the future? And we need to remind ourselves, remember that as long as people, as humans, have problems or wishes, we will not run out of work. Again, as long as people have problems and wishes, we will not run out of work. We have not yet invented. We have not yet invented the professions. We have not yet invented the jobs. We didn't see the opportunities in the 1850s, in the 1815s, where the machine wreckers, the Luddites, protested and destroyed the machines. They were not able to envision the jobs of the future, but there were new jobs. In the 60s, they told us machines will do all the work and you're going to work maybe for 20 hours a week or 8 hours a week. They were kind of right, because the work that we did back then is actually automated, became automated. but we invented new work and new jobs. And what is the single most important qualification that we need to have, in order to, well, to be unique, to be differentiated, to be uniquely positioned, and to be in a good cooperation with AI and robotics? We need to be excellent humans. It sounds like a very simple message, and it kind of is. If AI can do it all, then we need to be excellent humans in our domain, because AI can never be human in the narrow sense. What does it mean, excellent humans? Well, it first means that emotional intelligence, what we used to call 100 years ago social intelligence, that this is maybe one of the most important qualifications. Being able to understand the emotions of others, to recognize the emotions of others and your own emotions, and to manage them, to deal with them, and to achieve goals together. The second of this qualification, excellent humans, I would say it's being able to communicate well. We all see in the world today, there are millions of people who believe in conspiracy theories, millions of people who are really, well, led astray by all this overwhelming information and all those strange things that are happening in the world. So we need to learn how to communicate well. We need to learn how to make others understand. We still believe that the picture in our mind can be transferred through a serial series of information and reconstructed in the other brain. It doesn't. We need to develop different ways to communicate. Logical thinking. If we really were good at logical thinking in our everyday work, then most of the problems in the world would not have occurred. As you were saying in the introduction, I'm convinced that the short-sightedness that is built into our brains, that this is maybe the worst shortcoming that people have in this world. The worst shortcoming. We destroy our lives. We destroy our companies. We destroy our communities and our cities and nations just because of the short-term profit, the short-term benefit. When we were like 20,000 years ago, we still have the same brain. It was good for us to just follow our instincts. Everything that was good for us felt good. So eat, drink, make babies was always good. And everything that was bad for us smelled bad, looked bad, attacked us, yelled at us. So we ran away. We just followed our instincts and it was all perfect. And today we are in a world that we have built ourselves, where sometimes, or oftentimes, it will be good not to do the easy thing in order to have a better future, and to do the hard thing for a better future. So we are not made for this. Our brain is made for the present. We are homo present. And since we are future blind in a way, we need to learn how to think. And one part of that is logical thinking. Self-leadership. Again, short-sightedness. If we manage to determine our goals and our visions, well, we do this very well. Have you ever made bad resolutions for the new year? No, you haven't, because you know what the good things are. But we have a hard time to act upon what we decided, to really do what is necessary for our goals, to really do what is necessary for our visions, what is necessary to preserve our planet. Changeability, being able to change yourself, even if it is hard. This is what we are not trained for. This is what we are not made for. Again, this is the short-sightedness that is built into our brains. And if we talk about AI, and if I talk about foresight, this is what it is about. Make your future self more important. Make your future me, your future we more important, because then your brain will be more able, it will be easier to sacrifice the moment in order to have a better future. Ethical behavior. We see a lot of problems caused by selfish behavior, caused by not following what is recommended in philosophy, only to act the way that you wanted other people to act as well. And to my mind, entrepreneurship. It is not okay, and we will not build a better future if we always wait for others to create jobs. This is not the way the world should be built. Entrepreneurship, doing something, solving problems, helping people. This is what we should do much more. Have a bright future.
Thank you, Pero, for contributing and sharing your vast experience. We're looking very much forward to more collaboration with you in the future. Please remain with me and let's skim quickly through the questions from the audience. You mentioned that we should make more out of our future. And there was one question about which skills should we drop actually out to learn and develop others?
So you mean, what should we unlearn? We should unlearn our love for the solutions, our love for our present concepts, our love for our present products. If we look at it from a business perspective, no customer, no patient, no client pays for a product or an hour or the concept or whatever. They always pay for emotional effects. And those emotional effects, like enjoying music, we used to buy records, we used to buy CDs and MCs, and we used to buy MP3 files, and now we're streaming, but the same thing is what is bought. So we need to drop our love for the solution. We need to develop our love for the effect, because there's one overlooked feature of those effects. They are eternal. In 100 years and in 1,000 years, we will want to enjoy something that sounds like music. The way we deliver it is going to be different. We will enjoy getting from A to B, meeting people, but we're going to do it with robotaxis. We're going to do it with holographic systems. We're going to do it with telepresence systems. So drop your love for the solution, develop your love for the effects.
Great, thanks a lot. I would actually like to stay with that and finalize here with your final quote. Thanks a lot again for sharing with us your experience. It was very, very interesting.
Thanks, Nelly.
Now, welcome. Now, before we are getting to the last panel, I would like to remind you about our grande finale, which will be about how to become the winner of the transformation rather than allowing yourself to become the victim of the system, namely turning the why me into try me with the legendary Daniel Meltzer. And now let me introduce you to our last panel discussion today on aligning employee skills to organizational capabilities. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome Natasha. Why is it special? Because it's always emotional for us parents when we see how our kids are stepping into something we believe in. Most of you will know our good friend and great SwissCognitive fellow, Jacques Ludic, who founded the important Machine Intelligence Institutes of Africa and has been several times with us on stage. And today we have his daughter, Natasha, who is the head of operation and education at the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa, as well as a content editor and social media and marketing manager at Vive Teams. Natasha, you are passionate about evolving the education system to ensure that education we get today will prepare us for our future while minimizing the gap in education between the impoverished and wealthy. Further, to analyze the education landscape to gain a truthful and accurate representation and building on rather than, hold on a second, now we have a problem, which can be applied practically, which just leads to waste resources. Let me quote you, Natasha. A strong economy begins with a strong, well-educated workforce. Who better would match for this discussion with you is actually Thomas, who is going to bridge between the generation. Thanks for being with us, Natasha. Thomas, over 21 years in UNICEF, yet you are still relentless about finding ways to empower children to reach their true potential as the main solution to many of the world's current challenges. Now, as the new Global Innovation Director, you and your team focus on spotting innovations that offer transformational potential for children, from data science to AI, machine learning, blockchain, to product innovations to be picked up and used so that together we create global social goods that advances humanity. It's my pleasure to have you with us. Anne, together with you, we have Anne, who is not only an experienced multi-market project lead in the auto industry, but she is rather a passionate speaker and enthusiast of valuable dialogue. Within her current empirical research project, she connects with AI and law experts across the globe doing her bit to shape state-of-the-art AI business cases. Our fourth panelist is Alberto Giovanni, who is Group Head of Data and AI at Adecco Group and a member of the Global Future Council on Data Policy at the World Economic Forum. He is an executive and an enthusiastic technologist with a focus on the development of AI solutions to augment human intelligence and well-being and growth. Alberto is an advocate of AI transparency, fairness, and accountability, and a promoter of upskilling and reskilling. And the chair of our great panel is Tom. Tom, you have the great pleasure to chair all these brilliant panelists. Most of you, dear audience, already know that Tom has recently joined SwissCognitive and will support our team with his amazing talent, unlocking the potential of every panel discussion, captivating the audience. Tom, you are the founder of the AI Journal, a free open source information hub on AI and emerging technologies. You have a passion for providing tools and resources to educate people on these topics covered on the AI Journal and provide the audience with an engaged platform to help them. Dear Tom, the virtual stage, once again, is all yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dalif. And it's great to be back after this time, to be back at one of the first SwissCognitive virtual events with such an awesome panel. So we've got some great people here, and I want to just delve straight in to give the audience maximum value. So we're going to start off looking at organizational capabilities and what it means aligning employee skills. And Alberto, I think this is a great question to kick this off with. What does it mean to align employee skills with organizational capabilities, please?
To me, it means at least two things. Firstly, to upskill people so they can work better, especially in a society of the future that is going to be, to a large extent, propelled by AI. And this means developing both hard and also soft skills. So on the one hand, of course, mastering the technology, but also importantly, augmenting human intelligence and the soft skills. So there is really no substitute for human intelligence, especially in areas that require judgment calls. I would like to take one example. Imagine the job of a physician, right, in the future. Clearly, there are going to be machines, right, that are going to be better than any human in performing, for instance, a diagnosis. At the same time, the job and the contribution of a medical doctor and a physician goes very well beyond diagnosis. It's in advising a patient on the best treatment, discussing with the patient, and making judgment calls. So this is something that, like we can extend to many kind of jobs and trades and professions. You want, artificial intelligence to provide you with useful information, but you want, at the end of the day, to have humans that are leveraging, their human touch, their humanity, to make, like the best informed decisions. That could be the best treatment, or maybe advising someone in finding the best career. So, in a way, I think the right way to think about, the relationship between the kind of human values, human contributions, and AI and automations is that we want a world where human qualities are enhanced and augmented by AI. And secondly, and this is at the level of the, organizations, right? We want to kind of update and transform organizations so they are able to really leverage these new skills and these new ways of working, to be more agile, to be more creative, to be a place where you can do innovation and have self-expression in the workplace. Successful organizations will need to be able to create and sustain experimentation and to continuously train and grow. So to become, more driven by purpose, by growth and meaning.
Yeah. I think those are such great points as well, Alberto, because it's so important for me to understand. That's why it's such a big point, education, and looking at it from what's the kind of next step and what's the kind of roadmap. How are you going to educate people on these areas? And I think that brings into the next question. Natasha, I want to come to you. And I think this is a real core question that I would like to know as well. What should schools and educational institutions be doing to prepare young people for AI in the workplace? As Alberto pointed out, so many great ideas and actual success stories. What should they be doing?
Thank you, Tom, for the question. I believe that the education that we give to our youth today should prepare them for their future. The workplace has changed enormously over the years, where our education system has, so to say, been left behind. AI in the workplace, AI has changed the way we do things in the workplace and also progressed the way we address problems. We can all agree that for institutions to remain relevant, it will have to incorporate AI into their systems of doing things. That's why educational institutions should use the limited resources they have as effectively as possible to prepare our youth for their workplace in 5 to 10 years. To make this practical, subjects like machine learning or data science or computer literacy should be incorporated into our school system to increase, firstly, exposure and then understanding also. Because what we don't understand, we fear. And the best way to address fear is to use the weapon of understanding and knowledge. Secondly, AI can also be used to address personalized education. Because we all learn differently and we grasp concepts at different speeds, it's very important to personalize education. Education should be an ongoing and experience which is freely available for all students. And this is why institutions like Khan Academy and SolarLearn are so important. I'm also a firm believer in starting from the ground up. And that's why I believe the way to educate and prepare our workforce is to educate and prepare our youth.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, Natasha, because I'm a prime example of that. Learning was a tricky thing for me at school, and as soon as everyone knows, I'm very bullish on things like VR and AR because it immerses you, right? Gets you into the experience and gets you to understand it. And I think what you were touching on is a great point, and it also lines us up brilliantly to Thomas's question that I have, or a question for Thomas, sorry. So people come out of education, and they might come out earlier than others. And some might have more hands-on experience than others, depending on their course or what they've been involved with. What is it various stakeholders in businesses, educational institutions, can do to foster those AI-related competencies amongst young people whose education might already be complete or is on the road to being completed?
I would say that the first bit that is important is the notion of continuous learning, right? The transition to AI is the transition is going to keep happening to us. We talk about lifelong learning. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on people, the reality of our days is that AI and the progress of AI and machine learning is going to force all humans, including ourselves, to keep adapting. And so that notion of adaptability is going to be so important for young people to understand that whatever they've learned is just the beginning of their learning journeys. That's the bad news, I guess, for many young people who are keen to get into it and start, making money and start delivering. But it's also good news because it means that for some of those who may not have had all of the education that they may have wished for or wanted, the journey is far from over. And so part of the stakeholders really accountability framework from a user perspective is to tell that message of that adaptability is going to be a lifelong journey. It's for you to shape that journey. Machines will be helpful if you want them to be in enabling that journey to go at your own pace in adaptive learning journeys, but also enable you to maybe jump bridges into a variety of skill sets that you may only have dreamt of and that your teachers may or may not have been able to give you, right? Many of the kids from Southern Africa or South Asia or other places may not have the kind of teachers that have the ability to offer them the skill set that they may need. But machines are there to bridge that gap and enable them to really, access skill set, knowledge, ability to be empowered in ways that they may not have imagined would be possible for them. So the future is there for them to take, and it's for us to open the doors to these learning to them.
Yeah, I love that. I love its idea of democratizing knowledge, right? Getting more people to understand these topics and understand parts of it's not as tricky as what some people might want you to believe. So I love that point, Thomas. And it lines me up quite nicely for the question I want to come to you with. And we've got a fair bit of practical experience, and I'd love to touch on that and look at, in regards to preparation and education, what is practical experiences towards AI business cases?
Yeah, actually, I'm coming from the, let's say, world of marketing originally. So I had a leading project assignment where there has been a setup of BI use cases, marketing analytics use cases, partly already machine learning use cases across multiple markets. So that means in the end, there were three main pillars I was covering as man responsible. First of all, the strategic alignment, meaning the chip in of all kind of stakeholders. And of course, we know the complexity of the technology that also is reflected actually in the project setup. So of course, you also need to bring all kind of stakeholders on board. So that was the first pillar, let's say. And the second one has been related to the how, right? To the enablement. So meaning the workforce, setting up the tool, setting up also the various use cases. And then, of course, as a very important part of it, the enablement of the workforce, meaning trainings, onboarding, support, etc. And then let's say a third pillar can be seen as the orchestration in a way. So also the supportive side here, the ongoing support, because it can never be seen as a silo project. It always has to be seen as a working project, let's say, approach. And this is actually my business-related experience, but then I'm now leading over to my purpose-related experience here, because I'm now conducting since more than 1.5 years in the field of AI and having a look into legislation, into governmental stakeholders and representative, but then also speaking with philosophers. So that has been really important and really interesting, because it reflects how important it is, and it cannot only be seen from a corporate entity, because it has to be seen from really various angles.
Yeah, very excited for you. That's amazing, Anne. You get to see a full circle and a full picture of the AI ecosystem, as I call it, to see all the different areas that approach it and attack it, which is really good. And Alberto, I'd like to come to you to the next question. So we're looking at single areas or single businesses. Let's look at a bigger picture. So beyond a single business or a single educational institution, what can society and industries as a whole do to prepare for an AI-powered world?
Clearly, it pays off well to be well prepared. And so, like to the extent that this is possible for organizations and even I would say for individuals, the ability not only to follow trends, but to anticipate and even proactively drive change, especially I would say in two ways. The first one is by setting up reskilling and upskilling programs as soon as possible. This is true for organizations, it's also true for individuals, to keep yourself, your colleagues, and the fellow members of society up to date, right, on these developments. Nobody really can predict the future, right? You can guess it, you can make educated guesses, but the more you kind of leverage data to do it well, and the more you do it in a way that is rigorous and objective, the better it is. in terms of preparation. And this is not only a business imperative, but it's also important, I think, for personal growth. And then the second aspect is we are talking about artificial intelligence here, right? And we can actually leverage artificial intelligence, and the promise of that is already in part realized and materialized, to train people, to identify sequences of skills to be learned, to identify gaps, to identify personalized journeys. So the potential of AI-driven solutions in training, assessment, diagnostics, and especially in career pathing is immense, right? And there are two main benefits there. The first one is the scalability, because it is cost efficient, it makes it more accessible, it democratizes learning. And the second one is for the quality, because artificial intelligence can be more objective because it leverages data. And if it is well designed, it can derive insights that are sometimes even counterintuitive, right, on the basis of what we know. And so also kind of drive our knowledge there.
Yeah. And that's such a good point as well, Alberto, because areas I always get asked is, seeing as I'm some former fortune teller, can you tell me what AI is going to look like in 10 years? And I say, I don't know what I'm having for dinner in 2 weeks' time, let alone what the roadmap is for 10 years' time. And we've got this mindset of just trying to guess and judge and predict how far we're going, where we actually lose sight of the current, as we're touching on, Natasha touched on, of the current pillars and frameworks. And I think that's such a great point, Alberto. And it sets me up to come to you, Thomas, with a question around, or wanting to ask, what are the avenues to avoid that this increasing use of AI actually widens the separation between rich and poor, and those who have and these that do not?
So from a UNICEF perspective, we have kind of two big risks to this AI kind of generational expansion. The first one is the algorithms that are being used are inappropriate for the world. They're just good for the Occidental world because they're built by people from the Western world. They function for people in the Western world. But if the AI, for instance, there's more and more AI that are being used to identify, for instance, loans reimbursement capabilities, right? But if you go to a village in India, many people are now trying to use solar power to be able for their kids to study. And we know that if you ask an AI to look at a loan reimbursement, the AI will say, well, that person can't reimburse a solar panel. The solar panel cost, $300, and that's not possible. And indeed, many households can't afford that. Yet, the same household can afford a reimbursement of $1 per day. And they will do that, and it will work, and they will reimburse that loan. So the kind of algorithms that are being created for the Western world don't necessarily work in the developing world. So that's one issue that we need to be cognizant of, that we need to reflect as to whether the kind of algorithm we're building are going to be working for one part of the world or all of the world. So that's a big ticket item, is to really make that value proposition work everywhere, or at least test it in different contexts. The second issue that we anticipate is the first mover advantage to some extent. And that first movers works also for rich people, right? If you belong to a better class of young people, then you go to a school that is using AI, to a school that is teaching you coding, that is teaching you exactly as Natasha was saying, how to use machine learning, how to be comfortable with all of this. If you live in South Africa, for instance, it's quite likely that your school is not connected at all to internet. You don't even know how to use internet or a computer, let alone machine learning and AI. So part of the response there is, first, let's connect all schools to internet. Let's kind of widen and get a playing ground that is equal, at least in terms of internet access. And then let's empower young people to believe in themselves, because once they're connected, their ability to learn is unmatched. Once their belief in themselves is what we need to give them, the belief that the space is theirs to build, and the ability to connect to the kind of knowledge that then they will build their own knowledge base. They will build their own journey to the skills that they need. And when we see that, young people in various contexts that have very little engagement with coding, suddenly we see them organizing political demonstrations, climate change engagement in ways, using Facebook, using Discord, using TikTok, in ways that we had not even imagined and coders had not thought of. And they're coming up with their own ways of organizing themselves and their communities in incredible and powerful ways. So the belief is one system, the self-belief, the confidence, and then the ability to access internet and the tools they will need for the future are some of the responses that we'd like to build with them.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting point because spur of the moment, last night, funnily enough, I was watching this new film on Netflix and it talks around the 9/11 tragedy and the person that was put in charge of distributing funds to different people that unfortunately lost their lives. And it looks at all the different, it's an algorithm essentially that looks at the mortgage, looks at what their job position. So you've got the ultra wealthy saying this isn't fair, and you've got the poorer side saying this is really, we're really grateful, but how do you get it right? And it's similar to education or training. And there's a great book to anyone in the audience called Weapons of Mass Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, which looks at financial models and how AI is being used, and it incorrectly shows how certain people from backgrounds can't get a mortgage or certain people's can't, and you go into this loophole of then you can't get into a school, you can't get a career, and then you end up homeless. So a really interesting topic of making sure it's fair, right? And Natasha, I think it leads on nicely to a question I want to come to you with, which is we're seeing a lot of people unsure about AI and how it's being used, how it will be used, or what it could be used for, as Thomas was touching on there. And I'd love to know, what are some of the misconceptions that cause individuals to fear the use of AI in the workplace, and what can we do to help eliminate that fear and align employees' talents? You're on mute, Natasha. It happens.
Great. Can you hear me? Thank you, Tom. Firstly, I would say AI is not only for the technology industry. To give a bit of background, my dad has been speaking about AI since what feels like the day I was born and how it will change the workplace. However, in my final year of studying accounting, a man from an audit firm came into our class and gave us an hour-long lecture on AI. First, I thought I was like in completely the wrong lecture, but then I realized my dad was right. AI isn't science fiction anymore, but just science fact. And another misconception I would say is that a lot of people think AI is too intimidating or too complex or will lead to the end of the world or something. But when in reality, AI is basically just very smart math that can pick up on human behaviors and patterns, because humans are creatures of habit. So that's how it picks up on that. And I believe the best way to fight this fear is by gaining knowledge and understanding around this. Further fear is also caused by the narratives that we tell ourselves. Once we believe there's misconceptions around AI, we feed it to our brain, we breed fear then. To eliminate this fear, I believe the best way to do that is to address the narratives. Yes, AI is going to replace some jobs and transform others, but AI can also lead to job creation and revolutionizing ideas around entrepreneurial opportunities. Furthermore, AI will have to earn human trust to thrive in the workplace. This is why experts will have to be honest and transparent about what AI can do and how AI can be used. As my mom likes to say, honesty is the best policy.
Yeah.
And then lastly, organizations will firstly have to use creative thinking to equip their workforce with the tools they need to adjust to these changes. And secondly, organizations will have to be fast in using smart decision-making skills around organizational structures in their company to ensure that employees' talents and capabilities are used optimally. As in this new world, I believe that it isn't the big fish that eats the small fish anymore, but the fast fish that eats the slow fish.
Yeah, love it. And I hope everyone in the audience, and especially business owners, are taking notes, because there you've got quite a few action items and quite a few ideas of what to consider in your business strategy of how to implement AI and how to use it properly, and how to tell people don't be scared of it, which is a constant challenge of mine. I'm always telling people it's to help. So Anne, I'd love to come to you. We've gone in more into the insights into routes to avoid, misconceptions, how we can prepare better. And going back to earlier in the conversation, as we were talking about when we were looking at the practical experiences for preparation and educational workforces, I'd love to please know what the risks and game killers were that you found when doing this.
Yeah, sure. And actually, I can directly relate to what Alberto recently mentioned before. It's really about having a personalized journey of education and really, not having for project X required skill Y. It's really being agile when it comes to education. So I would say a game changer is really enforcing and enhancing agile education, agile training, also in the corporate context, and then avoiding, let's say, a one-way training, and really have this broad perspective, because this is what is crucial for, let's say, not only creating a successful project and a successful automated process or semi-automated process, but really to create, on a long-term perspective, motivated employees, having the chip and having actually, the spirit, the mindset, the proper mindset in place. And that's actually leading to a next success factor I, kind of evaluated, being the purpose. So we need a purpose, and everybody needs a purpose, right? Every day we wake up, we want a purpose what we're doing. And that's the same actually when it comes to new capabilities that are required, new competencies. And for me, purpose also at work goes hand in hand with having a trustworthy work spirit. And actually that is perfectly leading also to ethical AI. So it's not only about setting up hard skills or really process-focused skills, but really having or embracing a broad skill set, be it soft skills, be it hard skills. I mean, in the previous panels, we were listening to really interesting conversation in this regard. And this is actually also my practical corporate perspective, let's say it like this. And I can fully agree that we're going into the right direction if we push forward of having this broad conversation. And then one more thing, because as I was saying, I'm also investigating a lot of time when it comes to legislation. And we know, because the European Commission, for example, they're launching the AI law proposal. And it's so important to set the boundaries and to be aware that once we have regulations, we cannot just, push forward. And this is also something we need to enhance and to prepare the corporate field and corporate world, the corporate identity entities to really push this and to really be aware of ethics and of legislation, because they will set the boundaries in future. And that will also create trust, right? If you have regulations, that will take away some fears of a lot of employees and individuals being impacted of automated decision making, being impacted of all kind of AI technology.
Yeah, it's interesting points, because I'm always at war with legislations, and seeing what regulations is, I fully agree with them, and I think they should be in place. But at the same time, back to our point earlier, we don't know what we don't know, and how can we make legislations around a technology where we haven't fully explored it or fully understood where it's going? And I think that will be a challenge I always have with myself and other people for the next 10, 15, 20 years as it becomes more advanced. But it does lead me to come to you, Alberto, with a question leading off Anne's great point. I'd love to get your feedback on what Anne said and understand what are the main risks and pitfalls you'd warn everyone, and what about when aligned with employees' skills, organizations' capabilities, where do you see the challenges or the pitfalls?
Clearly, there are several risks, but I would like to highlight two of them that I think are particularly relevant in this conversation. The first one is that we must absolutely avoid creating systems of perverse incentives. And it is very difficult, right, to know in advance what the outcomes are going to be. So there is going to be necessarily a lot of experimentation, but it's important, among other things, to stay away from things like having measures that become targets, because then they can hardly be a good measure. That's one thing. And then the second one is to from the very beginning do things right when it comes to the ethics of artificial intelligence. It is good for society, it's also good for business, because it makes it fair for everybody. And it's also a professional obligation of all of us that will work in this field. Among the several important aspects of the AI ethics, I would like to highlight two that are very close to my heart in particular. The first one is transparency, because you can hardly be ethical without being transparent. And the second one is fairness. And fairness also includes a notion of inclusion. because we want, artificial intelligence to be to the benefit of everybody, right? And what can we do then? We can ask ourselves to build a desirable future. The first thing is to make a serious commitment to learning, to put learning and growth as a cornerstone of your strategy. To ask yourself, how can artificial intelligence augment human intelligence? And then the second one is also to kind of leverage new technologies that are offering, I think, a fantastic kind of way of dealing with privacy, in particular, privacy preserving machine learning, to combine the power of analytics and at the same time to be able to guarantee privacy. As a takeaway message, I would say to all of you that you are listening, be an active participant, be an active voice when it comes to the development of ethical artificial intelligence. As a developer, as a user, as a researcher, and a citizen or a leader in business or your community, the future is not set yet. It will be you and all of us together, and it's the responsibility of everybody to create a desirable future, which includes also ethical artificial intelligence.
Yeah, love it. And you've taken it from me as well, Alberto, which is great, because just before we finish up here, I want 30 seconds with each of you. Alberto's given a great point, and Natasha will come to you first. What would you say as a question or a piece of advice, such as Alberto's, to the audience today and people that watch the recording around aligning employee skills to their business's capabilities, please?
Thank you. I would like to just say that there's this proverb, Chinese proverb that is very famous that goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. And we are facing this unprecedented challenge of reskilling our education and educating our workforce. And while also dealing with the fear that goes alongside that, for me, I believe AI can be something that can either scare us or it can be something that excites us. And it's up to us to take charge of the course that AI takes and to help shape a better future that benefits all in a smart technology era.
I love it. Thomas, what do you say?
I say, if you want a fair world, then that amazing opportunity for change and for shaping the future should be accessible to all. How do we make that happen?
Yeah, I love it. Crisp and to the point. And Anne, what would you be saying?
I'm actually supporting your idea of having a fair world, having a fair business world, and having really the enablement of the workforce in a broad context, be it ethics, be it legal skills, be it also process technological skills. So having really a scope of skills that needs to be enabled and really pushed forward in a very agile way, because the technology is so agile and we also need to be agile.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I mean, there's great points here, and I feel like I could have this conversation for at least another hour, but I'd encourage every person that's watching today, and really grateful for each of your time, to reach out to each of these speakers and connect with them, listen to them, ask them more questions, and learn from them. So it's been a real pleasure to spend this time with you today, and Thomas, Alberto, and Natasha, and look forward to doing it again soon. Dalif, thank you for having us, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
First of all, it's really amazing, and I absolutely share with you, Thomas, we could go on for not an hour, even for hours. It was so much to share, discuss, and brainstorm about. One thing that for me, again, and all the people out there who knows me know how much my heart beats for the young generation, how important it is that actually we are raising the voice. As Alberto, you said, we have to be active and always thinking about that every decision that we're making it for the future generation, for the youngsters. And it's great to have you people with us. Sorry, now I have to change so we can see both of you. So thanks a lot again to be with us. And please share your insights with our panelists, connect to them, and support especially the youngsters. And Thomas Darwin, you will support me in that. This is exactly what you do, not only for the young people, but also for the kids. So now we will go on to the next and final keynote. The grande finale that we are looking to now will be with Hold on a second. We have to go up. We're going to have the keynote with David Meltzer. As I mentioned to you, David is a co-founder of Spots One Marketing and formerly served as CEO of the renowned Lee Steinberg Sports and Entertainment Agency, which was the inspiration for the movie of Jerry Maguire. David has been recognized by Variety magazine as their sports humanitarian of the year and awarded the Ellis Island Medal of Honor. He's also the executive producer of the Bloomberg and Amazon Prime television series 2 Minutes Drill and Office Hours. His life's mission is to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. This simply yet powerful to an incredible journey to provide one thing: value. In all this content and communication, that's exactly what you'll receive. As part of that mission, for the past 20 years, he's been providing free weekly trainings to empower others to be happy. I can't imagine a better grande finale than having David talking about turning the why me into try me. David, the virtual stage is yours.
So much. What an honor it is to be here. What a great way to close out, because I think people forget, especially with AI, that their perspective is their co-pilot in life, their co-pilot of what's going on. And so many of us allow fear of the unknown, fear of our own personal ego-based consciousness to create interference between us and the unbelievable opportunities that exist within merging technology into our daily lives. And there's three things that we have to remember as we look at this perspective as a co-pilot, this try me, not a why me attitude. And the first is to understand what we have control of. And we have control of three things. One, we have control of our mindset. We have control and give meaning to everything that we see. All the artificial intelligence, all the technology that exists around us are tools that enable us to be more productive, accessible, and gracious. What does that mean? With our mindset, we want to look for the light, the love, and the lessons in the technologies that are being utilized. When we look for those, they maximize what we want, not what we don't want, not what we're afraid of, not what other people want for us or what's missing. Because when we focus in on what other people want for us, what other people are afraid of, what other people say, what's missing or what we don't want, that's exactly what we get. And so we have to remember that we have complete control of our own mindset at all times, regardless of the technology behind us, that we give meaning to everything we see. And if we can utilize our technology in order to effectuate being more productive, meaning providing more value and receiving more value through accessibility and being accessible to more people, which are the main tenets of what AI allows us to do, to provide more value, to be more accessible, not only accessible to others, but accessing what we want, and most importantly, to be more gracious, to provide the light, the love, and the lessons that life avails us to allow us to live not in a world where we're victimized by artificial intelligence, where things happen to us and not even for us, in a scarce world where we buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like, and the AI is utilized in a scarce mechanism for just me. But artificial intelligence can be used to expand from a try me, victimized world into a why me, creative, innovative world, that there's more than enough of everything for everyone, utilizing the right perspective, the control of our mindset in order to effectuate exactly what we want, not what other people want for us, not what's missing and not what we don't want. The second thing that we have to have control of is our heart set. Our heart set, the way what we feel. Michelangelo always said, it's not what we say or what they will remember, it's how they felt is the most important thing. People buy on emotion for logical reasons. They make decisions on emotion for logical reasons. And when we understand the practice of ending fear, Then we can utilize our heart set in order to facilitate the meaning that we want to give to the extraordinary efficiencies, effectiveness, and statistical success that AI provides us with. And so when we get a control of our heart set of how we feel by 4 steps of practicing ending fear. Number 1, identify what you're afraid of. Understand that the ego itself, Freud with his primal fears, says that we have the need to feed, fight, flee, or the other F word, which my friend Gary Vaynerchuk here in the United States always uses. But what happens when we're in the primal state of fear is that the blood leaves our brains and goes to our body so we can fight, flee, feed, and the other F word. And why is that so important? Because if we don't understand the triggers of the ego, especially those triggers that are created by the unknown, because we're looking outside of us, not inside of us at our mindset with perspective as our co-pilot or our heart set of the way we feel. But if we're looking inside of us and identifying the triggers of the ego, then we can stop when we find that AI has called us to have a need to be inferior. It gives us a need to be superior. AI gives us a need to be separate. AI gives us a need to be angry, anxious, frustrated, worried. Worried is a wasted emotion. Worrying is praying for what you don't want, which I previously discussed is exactly what we don't want with our own perspective. Worrying is to me the biggest creative interference or void, shortages, and obstacles and resistance in what we want. And so when we understand and identify the needs of the ego, when we identify what triggers these needs, so that we can then what? Not resist it, not fight it, oversell it, back end sell it, go around it, through it, under it. No, instead, stop as a second step. Stop when you see the triggers, when people are afraid of what they don't know, especially concerning technology and artificial intelligence. Stop. Breathe through your nose, out through your mouth. Get your blood back into your brain. See, so many times we try to utilize our higher power thinking with no fuel in it because we're in a primal state of fear. And these fears, they grow arms and legs and they exacerbate and accelerate and compound on themselves. Instead, if we stop and breathe, drop down to center or to neutral, we can then roll in the right trajectory. You see, what AI causes us to do is to be afraid of the unknown, to have the need to be separate, inferior, superior, anxious, frustrated, angry, guilty, worried, resentful, all of these different things, when all we need to do is stop, identify that we're in this state of mind, this wrong perception, breathe and drop, and then roll in the right trajectory. You got to realize that when you're in this mindset and heart set of fear, that your mind, your body, and your soul are on fire, you simply have to stop, drop, and roll when you're on fire. The third thing that we have control of are our habits, our daily practices. And these daily practices effectuate exactly what we do. And the problem that most people have is they look at opportunities that cause efficiency, effectiveness, and statistical success, that utilize the lens of productivity, accessibility, and gratitude. And they end up creating more resistance because, number one, they don't know what they want with it. See, if you start taking inventory of what do I want personally with AI? What do I want experientially with AI? What do I want to give the productivity and value with AI? What do I want to receive? And this weighted balance can change every day because the technology changes so fast and our perceptions change so fast and the meaning that we give it change so fast. So you cannot be afraid of being a hypocrite and changing your mind. You see, there's 2 types of people in the world. There's ignorant people and there's ignorant people. And what I have found is there's ignorant, humble people, especially in technology, that say, I don't know what I don't know. And I'm going to utilize the rule number 6 in my life of not taking myself so seriously. So I'm going to have an open mind, an open heart, and open hands. And then there's the other ignorant people that are arrogant, ignorant people. The arrogant ignorant people, they think they actually know what they don't know. And then they create the separation, the interferences, the voids, the shortages, the obstacles from utilizing this extraordinary opportunity for what it's best suited for personally, experientially, giving and receiving wise. And once you know your what, with a humble and open mind, heart, and hands, we then can figure out who can we help with this technology and who can help us. The fastest way to get to where you want to be is to ask someone who has been there or in a situation you want to be in and ask them for directions. So many people aren't humble enough to ask for help. Ask for help. Know your what, know your who, and then know your how. Utilizing those lenses of productivity, accessibility, and gratitude to be efficient, effective, and statistically successful. How do we utilize this technology in order to effectuate the activities we have planned, the activities we don't have planned, and even our sleep? You can tell through this technology how each of these realms of activities that we have planned, don't have planned, and our sleep will effectuate the productivity, accessibility, and gratitude in our lives, creating more efficiency, effectiveness, and statistical success in what we do. If we have the right mindset, heart set, and the right conscious continuum to stay out of the ego-based continuum. What we need to do, if you know your what, your who, and your how, it now allows us to figure out, how do we prioritize this extraordinary opportunity? How do we make our why me into try me? And most people can't make a decision because they don't know their what, their who, and their how. You need to prioritize by what's most important first. What do I do now? You cannot know what's important to you. See, urgency is a subset of importance. It's not what we do first. So many people are reactive in a sense because they don't know where they are. They're at the right place at the perfect time. They are exactly where they're supposed to be. They're happy, healthy, wealthy, and worthy. See, you can't go ahead and utilize the law of Goya, G-O-Y-A, get off your ass and make things happen, unless you're happy with the law of gravity, meaning you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You can utilize the technologies themselves in order to determine your what, your who, your how, but understanding your now. See, remember, 100% of the things you do now get done. AI allows us to get things done now. 100% of things you get done now. And the difference between profitable, passionate, and purposeful people are that they get things done. And so many people don't realize the efficiencies, effectiveness that are created when you get things done now. It takes half as much time minimum when you get things done, but you cannot get things done now. You cannot be in the present unless you know your what, your who, your how, with the right mindset, heart set, and the conscious continuum to remain in minutes and moments in fear by stop, dropping, and rolling. The biggest resistance, voidage, shortages, and obstacles that are created with AI are because people are not utilizing the powers that they have. They are looking outside of themselves for what they want, not inside of themselves for what they have and what they can have. Your perspective is your co-pilot, especially when it comes to new technologies. Remember, it allows us to be creative. Creativity is the expression of God through us. See, if you are happy, healthy, wealthy, and worthy, then all you need to do is figure out, what are we doing to interfere with our happiness, our health, and our wealth? Not trying to go get happy, go get healthy, go get wealthy, go get worthy. No, we ourselves have it already. And AI is just a tool to help us what? Find our purpose, find our passion, clear the interference between it and us. And most importantly, be happy. See, we can't give what we don't have. So we want to what? Receive more, allow it not to happen to us as a victim in a world of why me? Why do they have that? Why me? There's not enough of anything for anyone. Or even in a world of for me, where I'm buying things I don't need to impress people I don't like. But most importantly, to allow everything to come through us with appreciation, our own value added. And AI facilitates the world of more than enough, better than anything, to assist us, our mindset, heart set, in the conscious continuum of staying out of resistance, voids, and shortages. It allows us for the unbelievable source of light, love, and lessons to come through us with appreciation for others. All of us have learned in our lives, you get more you give, the more you receive. But people forget the first step. You got to receive first so you can give. You can't give what you don't have, whether it's gratitude, forgiveness, account. You can't give what you don't have. See, when you receive, you have this much. When you appreciate what you have, it grows. That means you add value to it. And then when you give it away, you acknowledge, acquire the knowledge of what you've had. And now you have a bigger void for the universe to fill with more. So, in essence, receive first, appreciate it. And then the more that you give, because you have more, the more you receive again and again. If you institute the right mindset, the right heart set, and the conscious continuum with those daily practices of the what, the who, the how, and the now, you will be able to apply your why, make more money, help more people, and have more fun. If you want any of this information, I will give it to you for free. David@dmeltzer.com. Thank you so much. And if you can empower yourselves to be happy and empower others, that will make me happy. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks a lot. I can't thank you enough. And I am a happy person, and you did me happy now listening to you. Great, great insights. Huge applause and virtual applause to you, David, for this grande finale. It was amazing. I would like to check quickly the question from the audience. We have a little bit of time, and I would like to read it to you. So one question is, what have you found to be most effective to invite people into AI opportunities without fear or anxiety?
One of the great blessings that AI has provided us is huge reach and accessibilities through the world. Billions of people are accessible. And I only have one criteria, and I have an open-minded template for this. I'm only looking for people with an open mind. And if I can utilize open-ended questions to figure out if you or others have an open mind, then I can determine two things. Are you a sponsor or a power sponsor of mine for AI? Meaning, do you know someone that can help me? Or can you help me? And do you know someone that can help me? You see, 80% of our time are spent trying to convince people that have a closed mind or people that bleed us. What I want you to do is take advantage of the enormity of accessibility. Look for people with open minds. If you come across someone with a closed mind by asking them open questions and they don't answer, then run away. Find people with open minds, determine if they know someone that can help you or they can help you themselves and know someone that can help you. We can accelerate, expand, and compound all the believability of people who do not have the fear to help overcome those who do.
You're talking out of my heart. I just can share that. One and last question I would like to ask you. What's something you've learned during this crisis you would have never expected?
That I didn't have my own priorities right. You know, for me, I'm blessed to travel the entire world 200 days a year and go to the biggest sporting and entertainment events with access to anything and everyone. And through the pandemic, I spent an enormous amount of time. I have 4 children and my wife, and I lost the value of sitting down at a simple dinner. In fact, I always tell people we have the Super Bowl this year in America, in American football. I said, you know, they can offer me all the passes they want, all the tickets they want. I would rather have dinner with my family at home. So the values of prioritizing my health and my family, as much as I teach empower others, I didn't realize to the extent that I don't know what I don't know. So make sure you have your non-negotiables in place. Your health, number one, by far. If you're healthy, you get as many wishes as you want a day. If you're unhealthy, you only have one wish. And then a non-negotiable is spending time every day with the people that are most important to you. And if you do that, I promise you will clear the interference between the happiness, the healthiness, the worthiness, and wealthiness that you've already been blessed with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The pleasure was all ours, and it was great to have you with us. Another applause for this great grande finale, and leave the whole audience with a great happy smile. And now another 3 hours of incredible content just finished. And I would like to share with you a small anecdote of this afternoon, because I'm doing my notes analog. We're talking about technical issues. Sometimes, I don't know, the teleprompter is not working. Once, I don't know, the audio doesn't work, and so on and so forth. One time, I even had a problem with my batteries of the mic. You won't imagine what happened to me today. Being analog, my pen was just out of ink. So I got another one, and I got another one. And I just thought, okay, this is just how life is. Doesn't matter if it's in the analog world or in the technology world, we always struggle with the basic infrastructure. So I put down some notes that I would like to summarize what we talked about today. We talked about a lot, and obviously it's not going to be possible to touch base all of the things, but I would like to go through about AI, first of all, is here to stay. And one of the things that we need to do and to learn, and not only for us, for everyone, is to elevate the human into this process. Another thing that I really liked is that AI is not only a business imperative, it's also a personal one. What I really liked, and if I'm not wrong, it came from Natasha, it was, we're not talking about science fiction now, we're talking about science fact when we talk about AI. Something that, as far as I remembered, because I forgot to put down the names, came from Alberto, who says that we need to address the right and transparent narrative to reduce fear. And I think this is a very, very important point. The more we talk, the more we explain, the better we can cope with it. And also, Perry talked about the logical way of thinking. And I think it's about the logic and it's about emotional. And we have to bring those things together. We have to listen to each other, and we have to do a lot of awareness and explain where we can put AI for the benefit of humanity. Significant to that, obviously, and we've heard that in one of our cognitive virtual about data literacy in the past, is the quality of data. The quality and literacy of data. And this leads me actually to another point about discrimination, about biases. And as I like to say, now we have the chance to unbias the bias. Let's have a look at the data. Let's challenge the algorithms and put the mirror in front of us and realize that most, or actually probably all the biases are coming from us, the human being. But we have a chance now to look at it and stand up and make it better. One thing that I really love to share with you, and we will today take, how do you say, like giving birth to a new coefficient. We have IQ, the intelligence quotient. We have EQ, the emotional quotient. We have LQ, the quotient of love. But there is a new quotient that one of our team members just sent me via WhatsApp, Julia, and I just love to share that with you. Let's say AQ is a coefficient that measures human ability to cooperate with AI. Thanks a lot, Julia, for sharing this with us, and we will definitely give birth to this new quotation and make sure that we are living towards that in an ethical and responsible way. There is a lot of other points that I could share with you, but if you missed something, go and see all the records. We will share with you also summarized a lot with our emails and on our webpage. And this leads me to a last point that Thomas Darwin said, that an algorithm that you develop for one continent will not necessarily work for another continent. And interesting wise, Our next cognitive virtual, taking place beginning of October, will be about the view of AI through our 7 continents. So if you have something to share that, please feel free to reach out to us. The next topic around 4th of November will be automation to autonomy, empowering machine with AI. And the last one in December, obviously, again, the trajectory in 2022. Let us know what topic you are an expert in, where you would like to share your knowledge and expertise with our community, and we will be happy to discuss. Now it's my great pleasure to invite my co-founder, Andy, on stage, who is making this all running behind the scene. So here again, a virtual applause to my co-founder, as well to the whole team who is making that run. Andy, the virtual stage is yours.
Come on. What should I say? It's great to have you all here. I mean, that's such a pleasure to have a so large amount of support of AI and SwissCognitive with us. So that's all what I can say. I hand them over to you.
So there's one sentence we love to end up with: why wait? Act now and share for success. Remain with us. Love you all and stay healthy.